Billionaire promises his black maid's daughter 3 wishes. Her first one stops him cold. A story of secrets, promises, and the courage to face the truth. The moment Arya Cole walked into my boardroom, I knew I was in trouble. Not the kind of trouble I'd built my empire navigating, hostile takeovers, market crashes, betrayals dressed as partnerships, but something far more dangerous. She stood there, 21 years old now, with her mother's quiet dignity and a confidence entirely her own. "Mr. Calder," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous tap of her fingertips against her thigh. "I've come to collect." Hello there, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well today, whether you're watching from your cozy bed or during your lunch break. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in this story. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. Now, back to my predicament. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking beneath my weight, and studied the young woman before me. Arya Cole, the daughter of my house manager, Serena. The little girl who once hid in my library during thunderstorms. The child I'd promised 3 wishes to during a moment of weakness 11 years ago. Collect what exactly? I asked, though I already knew. My stomach tightened with dread. Arya placed her palms flat on the polished mahogany table that had witnessed billion-dollar deals and the downfall of countless competitors. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, unflinching, locked with mine. "You promised me 3 wishes when I was 10 years old. The night my mother couldn't breathe and the ambulance came. You said if I ever came to you with a need you couldn't ignore, you'd give me 3 wishes. Anything. No limits." She tilted her head slightly. "I'm here for my first wish." I remembered that night with painful clarity. Serena collapsed in the kitchen, her airways closing as the asthma attack gripped her. The terror in little Arya's eyes as the paramedics rushed her mother away. The way her small hand had clutched mine, desperate for reassurance I wasn't equipped to give. "I'm surprised you remember that," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "You were just a child." "I remember everything, Mr. Calder." Something in her tone sent a chill down my spine. "Every kindness. Every question you avoided. Every check you thought I didn't know about." I stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan. 52 stories up, the world looked orderly, manageable. Problems reduced to ant-sized concerns. But the reflection in the glass showed Arya watching me, waiting, and I knew this problem wouldn't disappear with distance. "Very well," I said, turning back to face her. "What's your first wish? A car? Tuition for graduate school? A startup of your own?" I smiled, genuinely this time. "You've always had a brilliant mind for business." Arya didn't return my smile. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and delivered the words I'd spent years dreading. "My first wish is the truth," she said quietly. "About why you've been paying for our lives in secret." The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched. The carefully constructed walls I'd built around certain memories began to crack. Memories of a rainy night. A desperate man. A promise made to Serena that changed everything. "Arya," I managed, my voice hoarse. "Some wishes shouldn't be granted." "You promised," she countered. "No limits." And there it was, the trap I'd set for myself 11 years ago, sprung by the one person I couldn't say no to. The one person who had no idea what her innocent wish would unleash. Because the truth would destroy us all. I've always believed that control is the only currency that matters. Money, power, influence, they're just different forms of the same thing. Control over your environment. Control over your destiny. Control over who gets close enough to hurt you. I learned that lesson early, abandoned by a mother who chose drugs over her son, betrayed by a father who promised to return but never did. Foster homes taught me that attachment was weakness, and Wall Street confirmed it. By 30, I'd built Calder Ventures into a billion-dollar empire. By 40, I was a legend, the venture capitalist with the Midas touch and the ice-cold heart. "Mr. Calder?" Arya's voice pulled me back to the present. "Are you going to answer me?" I studied her face, the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes. So much like her mother, yet entirely her own person. Serena had raised her well, despite everything. "Why don't we sit down?" I gestured toward the seating area in the corner of my office, away from the boardroom table that suddenly felt too formal, too much like a battlefield. Arya followed me, perching on the edge of a leather armchair while I took the sofa across from her. The city sprawled behind her through the windows, a glittering testament to ambition and ruthlessness. Before I answer anything, I said carefully, I need to understand what you think you know. She crossed her legs, smoothing her skirt, a simple, elegant design that probably cost a week's salary for most people. Not that Arya would know that. Serena had always been careful about how they spent my money, insisting on modesty despite my protests. I know you've been paying for our apartment since I was 8, she began. I know you covered my private school tuition, my college expenses, my mother's medical bills. I know you set up a trust fund in my name that I can access when I turn 25. She paused, watching me. What I don't know is why. I reached for the crystal decanter on the side table, pouring myself 2 fingers of scotch. I didn't offer her any. Despite her age, I still couldn't quite see her as an adult. Your mother works for me, I said simply. I take care of my people. Arya's eyebrow arched skeptically. Do you pay for all your employees' children to attend Princeton? Do you buy apartments for all your housekeepers? Serena is not just a housekeeper, I snapped, more sharply than I intended. She's my house manager. She runs my entire domestic life. For 13 years, Arya acknowledged. But your generosity started before that, when she was still working for the Prestons. I froze, the glass halfway to my lips. The Prestons. A name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in years. How do you know about the Prestons? I asked quietly. Mom keeps a box of old photos. Employment records. There's a recommendation letter from Mrs. Preston dated a few months before she started working for you. Arya leaned forward. What I can't figure out is the timeline. Why would a billionaire venture capitalist hire a housekeeper away from a middle-class family in Queens? And why would he then proceed to pay for her entire life in secret? The scotch burned my throat as I swallowed. Your mother is exceptional at what she does. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting today. I set down my glass with finality. Arya didn't flinch. You promised me 3 wishes. No limits. And I'll keep that promise, I said. But some truths aren't mine alone to tell. I need to speak with your mother first. Something flickered across Arya's face. Disappointment, frustration, determination. She won't tell me. I've asked. For years, I've asked. I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. Then perhaps that should tell you something. It tells me there's something worth hiding, she countered, rising to her feet. She was tall, taller than Serena, and she held herself with a quiet dignity that made her seem older than her 21 years. Something important enough that both of you have kept it secret my entire life. The weight of those secrets pressed down on me, memories I'd locked away surfacing despite my best efforts. The night everything changed. The promise I made. The debt I could never repay. Come to my home for dinner tomorrow night, I said finally. 7 o'clock. Your mother will be there. We'll talk then. Arya studied me, searching for deception. You'll tell me the truth? All of it. I'll tell you what you need to know. She shook her head. That's not good enough. I wished for the truth. The complete truth. Be careful what you wish for, Arya, I said softly. Some truths change everything. That's what I'm counting on. She gathered her purse, heading for the door. Then she paused, turning back. One more thing, Mr. Calder. Roman, I corrected automatically. After all these years, I think you can call me Roman. A small smile touched her lips. Roman, then. I want you to know that whatever the truth is, I'm ready for it. I've spent my whole life watching my mother work herself to exhaustion, refusing help she clearly needed, keeping secrets she didn't have to keep. I've spent my whole life wondering about the man who pays our bills but keeps his distance. I'm not a child anymore. I deserve to know. With that, she left, the door closing softly behind her. I returned to the window, staring out at the city I'd conquered. For all my wealth, all my power, I couldn't stop what was coming. The carefully constructed walls were crumbling, and I had no one to blame but myself. My phone buzzed. Serena. She came to see you, didn't she? I typed back, tomorrow night. Dinner. It's time. Her response was immediate. Please don't do this. But some promises couldn't be broken, even when keeping them might destroy the only real connection I'd ever allowed myself to form. I had until tomorrow night to decide how much of the truth Arya Cole could handle and how much I could bear to reveal. The next evening, my penthouse hummed with tension. I dismissed the staff early, all except Serena, who moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, her movements betraying none of the anxiety I knew she felt. "She'll be here in 20 minutes, Serena said, not looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. Her knife hit the cutting board with rhythmic precision. "There's still time to reconsider." I swirled the wine in my glass, watching the burgundy liquid catch the light. "She made her wish, Serena." "I gave my word." "You gave your word to a frightened 10-year-old child." The knife paused. "Not to a young woman determined to uncover secrets that aren't hers to know." "Aren't they?" I challenged softly. "These secrets have shaped her entire life." Serena finally looked up, her dark eyes meeting mine. At 45, she was still beautiful, her skin smooth, her posture elegant, her presence commanding despite her role as my employee. Only the silver strands threading through her tightly coiled hair betrayed the passage of time. "Some truths serve no purpose except to cause pain," she said. "And some lies do the same." I set down my glass. "She knows I've been supporting you both. She knows it started before you worked for me. She knows about the Prestons." Serena's knife clattered to the counter. "How?" "She found your old employment records." "She's piecing it together, Serena. Better she hears it from us than constructs her own version." "What exactly do you plan to tell her?" Her voice had dropped to a whisper. Before I could answer, the elevator chimed. We both turned toward the foyer as Arya stepped into my home, looking both familiar and strangely out of place. She'd been here countless times growing up, birthday celebrations, holiday dinners, afternoons spent in my library while Serena worked, but tonight was different. Tonight, she wasn't a child under my protection. She was a woman demanding answers. "Hello, Mom," she said, kissing Serena's cheek before turning to me. "Roman." My name on her lips still felt strange. For 13 years, I'd been Mr. Calder to her, a distant figure of authority, not the man who'd watched her grow from afar, who'd celebrated her achievements in silence, who'd protected her for reasons she couldn't begin to understand. "Dinner's almost ready," Serena said, her voice too bright. "Why don't you two go sit in the dining room? I'll bring everything out." "I can help," Arya offered, but Serena shook her head. "Go. Talk. That's why you're here, isn't it?" I led Arya to the dining room, where the table was set for 3. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights, a glittering backdrop to the conversation we were about to have. "Your mother doesn't want me to tell you," I said as we sat down. "She believes some secrets should remain buried." Arya's gaze was steady. "And what do you believe?" "I believe that secrets have power only as long as they remain hidden." I poured her a glass of wine. "But I also believe that your mother's wishes deserve respect." "What about my wishes?" Arya asked. "You promised me 3. No limits." "So I did." I studied her face, the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes. "But before I honor your first wish, I need you to understand something. The truth you're asking for will change how you see your mother. How you see me. How you see yourself. I'm prepared for that. Are you?" I leaned forward. Once certain doors are opened, they can never be closed again. Serena entered with a platter of food, setting it between us before taking her seat. The 3 of us sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. "Mom," Arya said finally, "I need to know. Whatever it is, I can handle it." Serena looked at me, a silent plea in her eyes. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine, a gesture of support I rarely allowed myself. "It started 13 years ago," I began, my voice steady despite the thundering of my heart. "Your mother was working for the Prestons then. You were 8 years old." "I remember," Arya said. "We lived in that small apartment in Queens. You had just started 2nd grade." Serena nodded, her eyes fixed on her plate. "What you don't know," I continued, "is that your father didn't simply abandon you as you've been told." Arya's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Your father, David, was in trouble. Serious trouble." I chose my words carefully, watching Arya's face. He'd gotten involved with some dangerous people. Loan sharks. He owed them a significant amount of money. How do you know this? Arya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I exchanged a glance with Serena, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Because I was there the night he disappeared, I said. The words hung in the air between us. Arya's face drained of color. You, what? She looked between us, confusion and shock warring in her expression. Mom? What is he talking about? Serena took a deep breath. David came to the Prestons' house that night. He was desperate, terrified. Mr. Calder, Roman, was there for dinner. A business meeting with Mr. Preston. Your father burst in, frantic, I continued. He was bleeding. Said they were after him, that he couldn't pay what he owed. The Prestons called the police, but your father panicked. He ran before they arrived. That was the last time I saw him, Serena said softly. Arya shook her head, struggling to process. But what does this have to do with you paying for our lives? With Mom working for you. I set down my wine glass. The men your father owed money to, they didn't just disappear when he did. They came looking for payment. To us. Arya's eyes widened. They came after Mom? Serena reached for her daughter's hand. They believed David had left the money with me. They threatened us, you and me. The Prestons contacted me, I said. They were concerned for your safety but didn't want to get involved. I had connections. People who could help. What Roman isn't saying, Serena interjected, her voice stronger now, is that he paid off your father's debt. All of it. A debt he had no obligation to pay. Arya turned to me, her expression unreadable. Why would you do that? You didn't even know us. The moment had come, the truth I'd been avoiding for 13 years. The reason I'd kept my distance while simultaneously ensuring their security. The reason I'd watched Arya grow up from afar, never allowing myself to get too close. Because I began, but Serena cut me off. Because he's a good man who couldn't stand by and watch a mother and child suffer, she said firmly. He offered me a job as his house manager, better pay, a safer neighborhood, a fresh start for us both. It wasn't the whole truth. Not even close. But Serena's eyes pleaded with me to stop there, to keep the deepest secret still hidden. Arya wasn't satisfied. That explains why Mom works for you. It doesn't explain why you've paid for everything in our lives for 13 years. My education. Our apartment. Mom's medical care. That goes far beyond employer generosity. Arya, please, Serena whispered. Some things are better left. No, Arya interrupted. I wished for the truth. All of it. She turned to me, her gaze unwavering. There's more, isn't there? Something you're both still hiding. The air between us crackled with tension. I looked at Serena, silently asking permission. After a long moment, she closed her eyes and nodded once. Your father didn't just disappear that night, I said quietly. He died. Arya's sharp intake of breath cut through the room. What? The men he owed, they found him before he could get away. There was a confrontation. It went badly. He's dead. Arya's voice broke on the word. All these years, you both knew he was dead, and you never told me? We were trying to protect you, Serena said, tears streaming down her face now. Protect me from what? The truth that my father is dead instead of just a deadbeat who abandoned us. Arya pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. What else aren't you telling me? The moment stretched between us, taut with unspoken truths. I could stop here, let her believe this was the extent of it. But her eyes demanded more, and I had promised her the truth. I was there, I said, my voice low. When they found him. I tried to intervene. Why? Arya demanded. Why were you there at all? I looked at Serena one last time, a silent apology in my eyes before I turned back to Arya. Because your father worked for me, I said finally. He was my driver. And his debt, the money he owed, it was my money he stole. The words landed like a physical blow. Arya staggered back, gripping the edge of the table for support. What? She whispered, looking between us in disbelief. Mom? Serena nodded, tears flowing freely now. It's true. David worked for Roman before he worked for the Prestons. He embezzled funds. When Roman discovered it, he fired him but didn't press charges. He gave David a chance to make it right. Instead, your father took the money to gamblers, thinking he could double it and replace what he'd stolen, I continued. He lost everything. And then he borrowed more, trying to win it back. So all this time, Arya said, her voice shaking, all these years of support, of paying for our lives, it wasn't generosity. It was guilt. The accusation hung in the air between us. Not entirely wrong, but not the whole truth either. Part of it was guilt, I acknowledged. I fired him without realizing how desperate he was. If I'd known. You might have prevented his death, Arya finished. So you've been paying for our lives to atone for your role in his. No, Serena said firmly. That's not why. Arya turned to her mother, confusion written across her face. Then why? Why would he do all this? Serena looked at me, and in that moment, I knew we had reached the point of no return. The final truth, the one we'd protected most fiercely, hung between us. Tell her, Serena said softly. She deserves to know everything now. I took a deep breath, meeting Arya's questioning gaze. I've supported you all these years, watched over you, protected you from afar, because I promised your mother I would. A promise made the night your father died. Why would such a promise matter so much to you? Arya asked, her voice barely audible. Because, I said, the words feeling like glass in my throat, David Cole wasn't just my employee who stole from me. I paused, the weight of 13 years of secrets pressing down on me. He was my half-brother. Arya's face went completely blank, as if her mind couldn't process what I'd just said. She sank back into her chair, her legs seemingly unable to support her. Half-brother, she repeated, the words hollow. You're saying my father was your brother? It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes, which means you're my. She couldn't finish the sentence. Your uncle, I supplied quietly. Biologically speaking. The silence that followed was deafening. Serena reached for her daughter's hand, but Arya pulled away, her eyes never leaving my face. How? She finally managed. How is that possible? I stood, unable to remain seated under the weight of her gaze. I walked to the window, staring out at the city lights while I gathered my thoughts. My father, our father, was not a good man, I began. He abandoned my mother and me when I was 5. I spent my childhood in foster care, believing he was gone forever. I turned back to face them. It wasn't until I was in my 30s, already successful, that I hired a private investigator to find him. Why would you look for him after what he did to you? Arya asked. A bitter smile crossed my lips. I told myself it was closure. In reality, I wanted him to see what I'd become despite him. I wanted him to regret walking away. Did you find him? I found his grave, I said flatly. He died 2 years earlier. But in the process, I discovered he'd had another family. A wife. A son. David. Arya's eyes widened. My father didn't know about you either? No. Not until I contacted him. I returned to the table but remained standing. I approached him carefully. Told him who I was. Showed him proof. He was shocked, to say the least. What did he do? Arya leaned forward, hungry for details about the father she barely remembered. He invited me to dinner. Introduced me to your mother. I glanced at Serena, who nodded encouragingly. You were just a toddler then. Not even 3 years old. I remember thinking how different they were, Serena said softly. David was charming, impulsive. Roman was reserved, calculating. But they had the same eyes. I continued, we developed a cautious relationship. Not close, but cordial. I offered him a job as my driver. He accepted. And then he stole from you, Arya said, her voice hardening. His own brother. Half-brother, I corrected automatically. And yes, he embezzled nearly $200,000 over 6 months. Arya's jaw dropped. That much. David had problems, Serena interjected gently. Gambling. Drinking. He hid it well, but it was always there, beneath the surface. When I discovered the theft, I confronted him, I said. He begged for another chance. Said he'd pay it back. I refused. Fired him on the spot. Without pressing charges, Arya noted. He was family, I said simply. However tenuous the connection. What happened next, she asked. I exchanged a glance with Serena. Your father spiraled. Found work with the Prestons, but the damage was done. He'd borrowed money from dangerous people, using my name as leverage. When he couldn't pay, they came looking for him. And found him, Arya finished. The night he died. I nodded. I'd been tracking him, trying to contain the damage he might cause. When I learned he was at the Prestons, I went there, hoping to intercept him before he did something desperate. But you were too late, she guessed. Yes and no. I took a deep breath. I arrived as he was fleeing. Followed him. Witnessed the confrontation. Tried to intervene. You were there when he died, Arya said, her voice hollow. Did you see it happen? The memory flashed before me, rain-slicked streets, shouting voices, the glint of metal, the sound of a gunshot. David's body crumpling to the ground. Yes, I said simply. Arya closed her eyes, absorbing this. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. All these years, Mom told me he abandoned us. That he just walked away one day and never came back. It seemed kinder than the truth, Serena whispered. You were so young. And as you got older, the lie became harder to undo, I added. We thought we were protecting you. Protecting me, Arya repeated bitterly. By building my entire life on a foundation of lies. Not everything was a lie, Serena protested. We loved you. We wanted you to be happy, to have opportunities. We. Arya interrupted, her gaze snapping to me. You keep saying we. As if you've been parenting me together all these years. An uncomfortable silence fell. Serena looked at me, uncertainty in her eyes. After your father died, I said carefully, your mother came to me. You both needed protection from the men David had borrowed from. You needed financial support. I offered both. Out of what? Family obligation. Arya's voice was sharp. Guilt over my father's death? Initially, yes, I admitted. But over time, it became more than that. What does that mean? I struggled to find the right words. How could I explain the complex evolution of my feelings toward them both? The way Serena's quiet strength had become essential to my life? The pride I felt watching Arya grow into a remarkable young woman? It means, Serena interjected gently, that what began as obligation became something else. Something deeper. Arya looked between us, her expression shifting as understanding dawned. Are you too? Have you been? No, I said quickly. Not in the way you're thinking. Then what way? Arya demanded. Serena reached for her daughter's hand again, and this time Arya didn't pull away. Roman and I have a complicated relationship, Arya. We're not romantically involved. We never have been. But we are connected, I added. By shared history. By mutual respect. By you. By me, Arya repeated, her voice flat. So I've been what? The project you work on together? The obligation you share. You've never been an obligation, Serena said firmly. Not to me, not to Roman. Then what have I been to you? Arya turned to me, her eyes challenging. All these years of paying for my life from a distance. Watching me grow up, but never really being present. What exactly am I to you, Roman called her. The question hung in the air between us. I'd asked myself the same thing countless times over the years. What was Arya to me? My niece, technically. The daughter of a half-brother I barely knew. A responsibility I'd accepted. But she'd become so much more than that. Your family, I said finally. The only real family I've ever had. Arya stared at me, searching for deception. Finding none, she shook her head slowly. Family doesn't lie to each other for decades. Family doesn't keep secrets this big. Dysfunctional families do, I countered. And we are nothing if not dysfunctional. A surprised laugh escaped her, quickly stifled. That's an understatement. Arya, Serena said softly. I know this is overwhelming. Finding out about your father, about Roman's connection to us. But please try to understand, we thought we were doing what was best for you. By lying? By hiding the fact that I have an uncle who happens to be one of the richest men in America. Arya stood again, pacing the length of the dining room. Do you have any idea how strange my life has been? Growing up in that beautiful apartment that seemed far beyond what we should have been able to afford? Attending schools with kids whose parents were executives and doctors while my mother worked as a housekeeper? Always feeling like there was something everyone knew but me. Her words struck me like physical blows. I'd never considered how our arrangement might have affected her sense of identity, her understanding of her place in the world. We should have told you sooner, I acknowledged. That's on me as much as your mother. More so, perhaps. Why didn't you? Arya stopped pacing to face me. Why keep this secret for so long? I glanced at Serena, who nodded slightly, giving me permission to continue. Because the men your father owed money to, they were dangerous. Vindictive. They would have used you to get to me if they'd known we were related. I ran a hand through my hair, a rare gesture of discomfort. And as you got older, there were other concerns. The press. Business rivals. People who would use any connection to me as leverage. So you kept your distance to protect me, Arya said, skepticism evident in her tone. Partly, I admitted. But there was more to it than that. What else? I hesitated, searching for the right words. I'm not good with emotional connections, Arya. My childhood taught me that attachments are dangerous. Vulnerability is weakness. I built my empire on those principles. And yet you supported us for 13 years, she pointed out. That seems like attachment to me. It is, I acknowledged. One I've never fully understood or been comfortable with. I could provide financial security, opportunities, protection. Those things were within my comfort zone. But being an actual presence in your life? A father figure? An uncle? I didn't know how to do that. You could have tried, she said quietly. The simple statement hit me harder than any accusation could have. She was right. I could have tried. Instead, I'd hidden behind my checkbook, convincing myself that money was enough. Yes, I said finally. I could have. I should have. Silence fell between us, heavy with regret and missed opportunities. Serena reached across the table, taking my hand in a rare public display of the connection we'd forged over the years. There's something else you should know, Arya, she said. Something I've never told you about that night, about why Roman has supported us all these years. Arya looked between us, wariness in her eyes. More secrets. The final one, Serena promised. After your father died, the men he owed money to, they came looking for me. For us. They believed I knew where David had hidden the money. Did you? Arya asked. Serena shook her head. There was no money left to hide. But they didn't believe that. They threatened us. Threatened you. Said they'd take what David owed out of our hides if necessary. I picked up the thread of the story. Your mother came to me, desperate. You were asleep in the car outside my office building. 8 years old and completely unaware of the danger you were in. What did you do? Arya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I made arrangements, I said simply. Paid off the debt. Ensured they understood that harming either of you would have severe consequences. That doesn't explain why you've supported us for 13 years, Arya pressed. You could have paid them off and walked away. Serena squeezed my hand, then released it. I made him promise not to walk away, she said quietly. I made him swear he would look after you if anything happened to me. Why would you do that? Arya asked, confusion evident in her voice. You barely knew him. Because he was your blood, Serena said simply. Your only living relative. And because I saw something in him that night, something beneath the cold exterior. Compassion. Decency. A capacity for love he didn't even recognize in himself. I looked away, uncomfortable with her assessment. Your mother overestimates me. No, Serena said firmly. I don't. You've proven me right every day for 13 years. Arya sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. So all this time you've been what? My secret guardian angel? My invisible uncle? The silent partner in raising me? Something like that, I admitted. She shook her head slowly. I don't even know what to call you anymore. Mr. Calder? Roman? Uncle? The last word hung in the air between us, loaded with implications. I'd never allowed myself to think of our relationship in such explicit terms, despite the biological reality. Whatever you're comfortable with, I said carefully. Arya studied me, her expression unreadable. I need time to process all this. To figure out what it means for everything. Of course, I said, relief and disappointment warring within me. Relief that the conversation was ending, disappointment that we'd left so much unresolved. She stood, gathering her purse. I should go. Arya, Serena began, but her daughter shook her head. Not now, Mom. I need space. Serena nodded, understanding in her eyes. Call me when you're ready to talk. Arya turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. My other 2 wishes, she said, not looking back at me. Are they still valid? Yes, I said without hesitation. Whenever you're ready to claim them. She nodded once, then walked out, leaving Serena and me alone with the aftermath of truths too long concealed. That went about as well as could be expected, Serena said after a moment, her voice tired. She hates me, I said flatly. No. Serena shook her head. She's angry. Confused. Hurt. But she doesn't hate you. She should, I muttered. I've been a coward. Hiding behind my money instead of being the family she needed. Serena reached across the table, taking my hand again. You've been exactly what we needed, Roman. You kept us safe. Gave Arya opportunities she never would have had otherwise. But at what cost? I asked, meeting her gaze. She's right, we built her entire life on lies. Not lies, Serena corrected gently. Omissions. Protections. And now she knows the truth. Not all of it, I said quietly. Serena's hand tightened on mine. Some truths serve no purpose, Roman. Some secrets are better left buried. I nodded, accepting her wisdom as I had so many times over the years. But as I looked toward the door Arya had just walked through, I couldn't help wondering if the final secret, the one even Serena didn't know, would remain buried forever. Because there was one truth I hadn't shared tonight. One secret I'd kept even from Serena. The real reason I'd been tracking David that fateful night. The real reason I'd tried to intervene in the confrontation that took his life. The real reason his death had haunted me for 13 years. Some truths were too dangerous to ever see the light of day. 3 days passed without a word from Arya. Serena moved through my home like a ghost, performing her duties with mechanical precision while worry etched deeper lines around her eyes. I buried myself in work, as I always did when emotions threatened to overwhelm me, but even the complex dance of billion-dollar deals couldn't distract me from the knowledge that everything had changed. On the 4th day, my private line rang, a number only a handful of people possessed. Calder, I answered, my voice clipped. It's me. Arya's voice was steady, determined. I want to meet. Something in my chest loosened at the sound of her voice. Name the time and place. Not your penthouse, she said quickly. Somewhere neutral. Of course. I understood her need for territory that wasn't under my control. There's a private room at Le Bernardin. 7 o'clock. Too formal, she countered. There's a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Driftwood on Atlantic Avenue. 4 o'clock today. A coffee shop in Brooklyn. About as far from my natural habitat as possible. I'll be there. Come alone, she added. I don't want Mom there for this conversation. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat back in my chair, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. What did she want? More answers? Confirmation of what she'd already learned? Or something else entirely? At precisely 4 o'clock, I stepped into Driftwood Coffee, feeling conspicuously out of place in my tailored suit among the casually dressed patrons with their laptops and sketchbooks. Arya sat in a corner booth, 2 mugs already on the table before her. She'd changed her hair since dinner, cutting the long waves into a shorter, more angular style that framed her face and emphasized the determined set of her jaw. You came, she said as I slid into the booth across from her. I said I would. I nodded toward the second mug. For me, black coffee. No sugar. That's how you take it, right? I was surprised she knew this detail about me. Yes. Thank you. We sat in silence for a moment, each taking the measure of the other. She looked tired, with shadows under her eyes suggesting sleepless nights, but there was a new resolve in her expression. I've been doing some research, she said finally. About you. About my father. About what happened 13 years ago. I kept my face carefully neutral. What did you find? News reports about an unidentified man found dead in Queens. Police suspected gang involvement. No arrests were ever made. She watched me over the rim of her mug. The case went cold. Yes. I also found financial records. Public ones, anyway. Showing that Calder Ventures experienced significant losses around that same time. Nearly $500,000. I raised an eyebrow. You've been thorough. Princeton education, she said with a hint of bitterness. Paid for by my secret uncle. I let the barb pass. What else? Articles about you. Your background. Foster care. Self-made billionaire. The venture capital king with the Midas touch. She set down her mug. Nothing about a half-brother. Nothing about a family connection to a murdered driver. I've always been careful about my privacy. Obsessively so, she agreed. Which makes me wonder what else you're hiding. I met her gaze steadily. You wished for the truth. I gave it to you. Did you? She leaned forward. Because something doesn't add up, Roman. The story you and Mom told me, it makes sense on the surface. My father stole from you. Got in trouble with loan sharks. Died. You felt responsible, so you've supported us ever since. That's the essence of it, yes. But it doesn't explain everything. Her eyes narrowed. It doesn't explain why a man like you, a man who built an empire on calculated decisions, who never does anything without a clear benefit, would spend 13 years supporting the family of a half-brother you barely knew. I told you. Your family. Family you didn't even know existed until you were in your 30s, she countered. Family you had no emotional connection to. No, there's more to the story. Something you're still hiding. I took a sip of coffee, buying time. She was too perceptive, too determined. Just like her mother. What do you want from me, Arya? The complete truth, she said simply. No more half measures. No more carefully edited versions. I want to know exactly what happened the night my father died, and why you've really been supporting us all these years. I set down my mug, studying her. Some truths are dangerous, Arya. I can handle dangerous. Can you? I leaned forward. Because once I tell you this, there's no going back. No returning to the life you've known. No pretending you don't know what you know. She didn't flinch. I'm not a child anymore, Roman. I don't need your protection. I need your honesty. I glanced around the coffee shop, suddenly aware of how public the space was, despite our corner booth. Not here. Then where? I made a decision. My car is outside. There's somewhere I need to show you. Suspicion flashed across her face. Where? The place where everything changed. The place where your father died. Her eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. All right. 20 minutes later, my driver pulled up to a nondescript street in Queens. Row houses lined one side, a small park on the other. Nothing to suggest that 13 years ago, a man had bled out on this very corner while rain washed his blood into the gutter. This is it? Arya asked as we stepped out of the car. Yes. I nodded toward the park. It happened there, by that bench. We walked in silence to the spot. A simple wooden bench faced the street, weathered by years of sun and rain. I sat down, and after a moment's hesitation, Arya joined me. It was raining that night, I began, my voice low. The kind of heavy, relentless rain that makes everything look different. Distorted. I followed your father from the Preston's house. He was panicked, running blindly. Why were you following him? Arya asked. The truth this time. I took a deep breath. Because I knew who he owed money to. I knew they were looking for him. And I knew what they would do when they found him. How did you know that? I turned to face her fully. Because I was the one who sent them after him. The words hung in the air between us. Arya's face drained of color. What? She whispered. Not to kill him, I clarified quickly. To scare him. To recover what was left of the money he stole. To make sure he understood there would be consequences for using my name, my reputation, as leverage with loan sharks. You sent those men after my father? Her voice shook with disbelief. Yes. The admission felt like ripping open an old wound. I had connections then, people who operated in shadows I pretended not to see. I used them occasionally to protect my interests. I told them to find David, to recover my money, to make it clear that crossing me had consequences. But you said it was loan sharks he owed money to. It was. He took what he stole from me and borrowed more using my name as collateral. The men I sent weren't the only ones looking for him that night. I stared at the spot where David had fallen. But they found him first. Arya's hands clenched into fists on her lap. You're saying you're responsible for my father's death? Not directly, I said carefully. I never ordered them to harm him. Just to recover what they could and deliver a message. But things escalated. Escalated, she repeated, the word hollow. You mean they killed him? It wasn't supposed to happen that way. The memory flashed before me, David's terrified face, the shouting, the sudden glint of metal. Your father panicked. Pulled a gun. One of them reacted. It happened so fast. You watched my father die, Arya said, her voice eerily calm. Watched men you hired kill him. I tried to stop it, I insisted. I was across the street when I saw the confrontation turn violent. I ran toward them, shouting for them to stop. But I was too late. And then what? You just, what? Walked away? Left his body there? No. I closed my eyes, the memory still vivid after 13 years. I knelt beside him. Tried to stop the bleeding. Called for an ambulance. But he was already gone. And the men who shot him? They fled when they saw me. I made sure they were dealt with later. Dealt with, Arya repeated. What does that mean exactly? I met her gaze steadily. It means they never hurt anyone again. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You had them killed. I protected my interests, I said carefully. And eliminated a threat to your mother and you. Arya stood abruptly, pacing before the bench. This is insane. You're telling me you essentially ordered a hit on my father, then had the men who carried it out killed to cover your tracks. That's an oversimplification. Is it? She whirled to face me. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're responsible for my father's death. That your guilt is the real reason you've supported us all these years. I stood to meet her, unwilling to have this conversation, looking up at her. Guilt was part of it, yes. But not all. Then what? What else could possibly explain 13 years of secret support? The moment had come, the final truth, the one I'd kept hidden from everyone, even Serena. Your father said something to me before he died, I said quietly. Words I've carried with me every day since. Arya went still. What did he say? He knew he was dying. Could feel the life draining out of him. He grabbed my hand and said, they'll come for them next. Serena. My little girl. They'll make them pay what I owe. I swallowed hard, the memory still painful. Then he said, you're her blood too. Promise me you'll protect them. Promise me you'll be the brother to them that you never got to be to me. Tears filled Arya's eyes. He asked you to protect us? With his dying breath, I confirmed. And I promised him I would. So all this time, the money, the opportunities, the protection, it was because of a promise you made to a dying man? A half-brother you barely knew. Partly, I acknowledged. But there's more. More. She laughed incredulously. How could there possibly be more? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the final revelation. After your father died, I went to your mother. Told her what happened. Offered protection, support. She was understandably wary. Didn't trust me. Blamed me, rightfully, for David's death. But she eventually accepted your help, Arya noted. Not immediately. She refused at first. Said she'd rather struggle on her own than take anything from the man whose actions led to her husband's death. I smiled faintly at the memory of Serena's fierce pride. But then something happened that changed everything. What? You got sick, I said simply. Pneumonia. Serious enough to require hospitalization. Your mother had no insurance, no savings. The hospital was threatening to report her to child services if she couldn't provide adequate care. Understanding dawned in Arya's eyes. So she came to you. She had no choice, I confirmed. You needed specialized care she couldn't afford. I paid for everything, the hospital, the medications, the follow-up care. And that's when she agreed to work for you? Not yet. That came later. I hesitated, then continued. While you were in the hospital, I visited. Your mother was exhausted, sleeping in a chair beside your bed. You were awake, though. 10 years old, hooked up to machines, and yet completely unafraid. Arya frowned. I don't remember this. You were heavily medicated, I explained. But you recognized me from the few times we'd met when your father was alive. You asked if I was there to take your mom away. What did you say? I said no, I was there to make sure you both had everything you needed. The memory was crystal clear, Arya's small face, pale against the hospital pillows, her eyes too knowing for a child her age. You studied me for a moment, then said something I'll never forget. What? She whispered. You said, my dad told me once that you were his brother. That means you're my uncle. Are you going to be my uncle now that he's gone? I swallowed hard. I didn't know what to say. I'd never thought of myself as anyone's uncle. Never wanted a family. But the way you looked at me, so trusting, so hopeful, I couldn't bring myself to disappoint you. What did you tell me? I said yes. That I would be your uncle. That I would make sure you and your mother were always taken care of. I met her gaze steadily. And then you made me promise. Promise what? You said, promise you won't leave like Daddy did. Promise you'll stay. I took a deep breath. And I promised. 3 times, because you insisted once wasn't enough. Arya stared at me, tears streaming down her face now. I don't remember any of this. The doctors said you might not. The fever was high, the medication strong. I reached out hesitantly, then let my hand fall back to my side. But I remembered. Every word. Every promise. And that's why you made the promise about the 3 wishes, she realized. Years later, when I was scared about Mom's asthma attack. I nodded. You reminded me so much of yourself in that hospital bed. Terrified, but trying to be brave. Needing reassurance I wasn't sure how to give. The wishes seemed tangible. Something concrete I could offer when everything else felt uncertain. Arya sank back onto the bench, overwhelmed. So all these years, you've been keeping promises. To my dying father. To a feverish child who doesn't even remember asking. Yes. But you kept your distance, she said, a note of accusation in her voice. You provided for us financially, but never tried to be a real presence in my life. Never acknowledged our relationship publicly. I told myself it was for your protection, I admitted. That keeping our connection secret was safer for everyone. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of failing you, I said simply. Of not knowing how to be the uncle you deserved. Of caring too much and losing you anyway. My entire life has been defined by people leaving, Arya. I didn't know how to stay. She looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time. Not as the billionaire who'd secretly funded her life. Not as the man partially responsible for her father's death. But as someone broken in his own way, trying to keep promises he never expected to make. So what happens now? She asked quietly. I sat beside her again, careful to maintain some distance. That depends on you. On what you want. What I want. She laughed, the sound brittle. I wanted the truth. Now I have it, and I don't know what to do with it. You still have 2 wishes, I reminded her gently. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. Do you know what I wished for, all those years ago in the hospital? The wish I don't remember making. I shook my head. You never said. I think I wished for a family, she said softly. A real one. Not one built on secrets and obligations and guilt. The words struck me like a physical blow. I'm sorry I couldn't give you that. Maybe it's not too late, she said, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. I stared at her, uncertain I'd understood correctly. What? I said, maybe it's not too late. She met my gaze directly. You're my uncle. My blood. The only family I have left besides Mom. And despite everything, despite the lies, the secrets, the complicated history, you've been there. In your own way, you've been there. Hope, an emotion I rarely allowed myself to feel, flickered to life in my chest. What are you saying, Arya? I'm saying I need time. To process all of this. To figure out what it means for my life, my identity, my future. She took a deep breath. But I'm not walking away. Not yet. I wouldn't blame you if you did, I said honestly. I know. She stood, brushing invisible dust from her jeans. That's part of why I'm not, Arya finished, her voice soft but resolute. You've spent 13 years keeping promises. Maybe it's time I made one too. With that, she walked away, leaving me alone on the bench where her father had died, where everything had changed. I watched her go, a strange mixture of hope and dread churning in my stomach. She hadn't forgiven me, not completely. But she hadn't condemned me either. It was more than I deserved. I returned to my penthouse to find Serena waiting, anxiety etched across her face. She called me, she said without preamble. Told me you took her to the place where David died. I poured myself a scotch, needing the burn. I told her everything, Serena. All of it. Her face paled. Everything. About the men I sent after David. About his final words. About the hospital when she was 10. I downed the scotch in one swallow. She deserved the whole truth. Serena sank onto the sofa, her legs seemingly unable to support her. How did she take it? Better than I expected, I admitted. She's processing. Said she needs time. But she didn't cut ties completely? No. I poured another scotch, offering one to Serena, who shook her head. She said she's not walking away. Not yet. Relief flooded Serena's face. That's something, at least. It's more than I deserve, I said, echoing my earlier thought. No, Serena said firmly. It's exactly what you deserve. You've spent 13 years atoning for a mistake, Roman. Keeping promises. Protecting us. You deserve forgiveness. I wasn't so sure, but I didn't argue. Instead, I asked, did she tell you about her other wishes? No. Serena frowned. Did she make them? Not yet. I stared into my glass. But I have a feeling they're coming. A week passed without word from Arya. I threw myself into work, as I always did when emotions threatened to overwhelm me. Serena reported that Arya had called her daily, their conversations cautious, but not cold. Progress of a sort. Then, on the 8th day, my private line rang again. Calder. It's me. Arya's voice was steady. I'm ready to make my second wish. Something tightened in my chest. Name it. I want you to come to dinner. At our apartment. Tonight at 7. Of all the things she might have asked for, this was unexpected. Dinner. Yes. Just the three of us. Mom's cooking. She paused. Will you come? Of course, I said immediately. Should I bring anything? Just yourself. She hesitated. And maybe that bottle of wine Mom likes. The French one. Chateau Margaux, I supplied. I'll bring it. Good. Another pause. And Roman? No suits. This isn't a business dinner. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat back in my chair, bemused. No suits? In 13 years, Serena and Arya had never seen me in anything but impeccably tailored formal wear. The request felt symbolic somehow, a stripping away of the armor I'd worn for so long. At precisely 7 o'clock, I stood outside their apartment door, dressed in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, the requested wine in hand. I'd been to their Upper West Side apartment countless times over the years. I owned the building, after all, but always as Mr. Calder, the benefactor. Never as Roman, the uncle. Never as family. Arya opened the door, her expression unreadable as she took in my casual attire. You came. I promised, I said simply. She nodded, stepping back to let me enter. The apartment was warm, filled with the scent of Serena's cooking. Unlike my sterile penthouse, their home had always felt lived in, comfortable. Photos lined the walls, Arya's graduation, her dance recitals, mother and daughter smiling on vacation. A life I'd funded but never truly been part of. You look different, Arya observed, taking the wine. Almost human. A surprised laugh escaped me. I am human, despite rumors to the contrary. The jury's still out on that, she said, but there was a hint of humor in her voice. Mom's in the kitchen. She's been cooking all day. I followed her through the living room, noting small changes since my last visit. New books on the shelves. A framed diploma from Princeton. A photo I'd never seen before, Arya as a toddler, held in the arms of a smiling man with my eyes. David. Serena looked up as we entered the kitchen, surprise flickering across her face at my appearance. Roman. You're here. As requested, I said, suddenly feeling awkward. Arya said you've been cooking all day. Nothing special, she demurred, though the array of dishes suggested otherwise. Just family favorites. Family favorites. The phrase hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning. Dinner was a strange affair. We sat around their dining table, making careful conversation about neutral topics, Arya's job at a non-profit, Serena's plans to renovate the apartment kitchen, the unseasonably warm weather. No mention of revelations or wishes or long-buried secrets. It felt like a performance, all of us playing roles we weren't quite comfortable with yet. As Serena cleared the dinner plates, Arya fixed me with a direct gaze. Thank you for coming. Of course, I said, still uncertain of her intentions. Though I admit, I'm confused about why this was your second wish. You could have simply invited me to dinner. Would you have come? She challenged. Not as Mr. Calder the benefactor, but as Roman? Dressed like this? Sitting at our table like family? I considered the question honestly. Probably not. Exactly. She leaned forward. That's why it had to be a wish. Because wishes have power. They create obligation. You don't need to obligate me to be part of your life, Arya, I said quietly. Don't I? Her eyes were penetrating. For 13 years, you've kept your distance. Provided for us financially, but never emotionally. Never allowed yourself to be truly present. I couldn't deny it. I told you why. Yes, you were afraid. She said it without judgment. Afraid of failing me. Afraid of caring too much. Afraid of what might happen if people knew we were connected. Those fears weren't unfounded, I pointed out. Maybe not, she conceded. But they were convenient. They gave you an excuse to keep your walls up. To fulfill your obligations without risking your heart. Her assessment was uncomfortably accurate. Before I could respond, Serena returned with dessert, a chocolate cake I recognized immediately. Is that? I began. David's favorite, Serena confirmed, setting it on the table. I used to make it for his birthday every year. I didn't know you still did, I said softly. Every year, Arya said. Mom makes it, and we talk about him. The good memories, the ones I have left. The stories she can share. He wasn't a perfect man, Serena said, sitting down again. But he was a good father. He loved Arya deeply. I know, I said, remembering his final words. His desperate plea for me to protect his family. Serena cut the cake, serving each of us a slice. Arya told me everything you revealed at the park. About the men you sent. About David's last words. About the hospital. I tensed. I should have told you years ago that I'd shared those promises with her. Yes, you should have, Serena agreed. But I understand why you didn't. You've always carried your burdens alone, Roman. Even when you didn't have to. We ate in silence for a moment, the rich chocolate cake bittersweet on my tongue. Then Arya set down her fork with deliberate care. I've been thinking about what happens next, she said. About what I want my life to look like now that I know the truth. I braced myself. And what have you decided? That I'm tired of secrets, she said simply. Tired of pretending. Tired of the careful distance we've all maintained. What are you suggesting? I asked cautiously. I want us to be a real family, she said. Not just in private. Not just through financial support. A real family with all the messiness and complications that entails. I set down my fork, studying her. That's a significant change from the arrangement we've had for 13 years. The arrangement was built on lies, she pointed out. On secrets. On fear. I want something different now. Different how exactly? I want you to acknowledge me publicly, she said. As your niece. Your family. The request sent a jolt of alarm through me. Arya, you don't understand what you're asking. The scrutiny that would bring. The danger. I understand perfectly, she countered. I've had a week to research exactly what it would mean to be publicly connected to Roman Calder. The press attention. The business implications. The security concerns. Then you know why it's not a good idea. No, she said firmly. I know why it scares you. That's not the same thing. Serena reached across the table, laying her hand on mine. Roman, listen to her. Really listen. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to consider Arya's request without immediately dismissing it. Why is this so important to you? Because I'm tired of living in the shadows, she said, emotion finally breaking through her composed exterior. Tired of being the secret project of a billionaire who won't claim me. Tired of wondering who I really am and where I belong. Her words struck me like physical blows. I'd never considered how our arrangement might have affected her sense of identity, her understanding of her place in the world. I thought I was protecting you, I said quietly. You were protecting yourself, she corrected, not unkindly. From having to be vulnerable. From having to let someone in. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But the risks are still real, Arya. Once the world knows you're my niece, everything changes. The privacy you've enjoyed, the normal life you've led, that disappears overnight. I know, she said. I'm prepared for that. Are you? I challenged. Prepared for reporters digging into your past? For business rivals using you to get to me? For the constant security concerns? Yes, she said without hesitation. Because the alternative is continuing to live a lie. And I won't do that anymore. I looked to Serena, hoping for support, but found none. You agree with this? I think it's time, she said gently. Time to stop hiding. Time to be the family we've always been in private. This isn't just about acknowledgement, is it? I asked Arya, suddenly understanding. You want more than that? Yes, she admitted. I want a real relationship. I want you in my life as my uncle, not just my benefactor. I want Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations and all the normal things families do. The prospect terrified me more than any business negotiation ever had. I don't know how to do those things, Arya. I never had that kind of family. Neither did I, she pointed out. But I'm willing to try if you are. I stood, needing space to think. This was moving too fast, asking too much. 13 years of careful distance, of protected boundaries, and she wanted to tear it all down in a single evening. I need time, I said finally. This isn't a simple decision. Disappointment flashed across her face. You promised. No limits on my wishes. I'm not refusing, I clarified. I'm asking for time to consider how to do this in a way that protects all of us. She studied me, searching for deception. Finding none, she nodded reluctantly. How much time? A week, I said. Give me a week to make arrangements, to prepare. Then I'll give you my answer. Fine, she agreed. 1 week. But Roman. Yes. I still have one wish left, she reminded me. And I intend to use it. The implicit threat was clear. If I refused her second wish, her third would force my hand. I nodded, acknowledging the leverage she held. 1 week, I repeated, then turned to leave. Roman, Serena called after me. When I turned back, she was holding out a small container. Take some cake. For later. Such a simple gesture, so domestic, so familial. I accepted it awkwardly. Thank you. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, the container warm in my hands, I felt the walls I'd built around my life beginning to crumble. Arya was right, I'd been protecting myself all these years, not her. Using security concerns and business implications as excuses to maintain my emotional distance. But acknowledging her publicly? Becoming a real family? The risks were genuine, not just to my carefully constructed life, but to hers as well. Once the world knew she was Roman Calder's niece, there would be no going back to anonymity. No returning to normal life. And then there was the final secret, the one I hadn't shared with either of them. The real reason I'd been so careful to keep our connection hidden all these years. If that came to light, everything would change. Everything. I stepped out into the night, nodding to my waiting driver. Home, I instructed, sliding into the back seat. As the car pulled away from the curb, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it, then froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins. The daughter of David Cole has been asking questions about her father's death. Dangerous questions. It would be a shame if she met the same fate. Attached was a photo taken less than an hour ago, Arya at her apartment window, clearly visible from the street below. Someone was watching her. Someone who knew the truth about David's death. Someone who saw Arya as a threat. In trying to claim her rightful place in my life, she'd unknowingly painted a target on her back. And it was my fault. All my fault. The darkest hour had arrived, and I had no idea how to protect her from the storm that was coming. I stared at the text message, my mind racing through possibilities, each more alarming than the last. Who had sent it? How much did they know? And most importantly, how immediate was the threat to Arya? Change of plans, I instructed my driver. Take me to the office. 20 minutes later, I sat in my private office at Calder Ventures, the building nearly empty at this hour. I'd made 3 calls, one to my head of security, one to a private investigator I kept on retainer, and one to a man whose name appeared in no official records, but who had helped me solve certain problems in the past. My security chief, Reynolds, arrived first, his expression grim as I showed him the text. How do you want to handle this, sir? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. In 13 years, he'd never questioned why I paid for security sweeps of an apartment belonging to my house manager and her daughter. Never asked why I required daily reports on their movements and safety. He was paid extremely well for his discretion. I want surveillance on Arya and Serena's apartment immediately. Discreet but thorough. And I want to know who sent this text. I handed him my phone. Trace it. Find them. Yes, sir. He hesitated. May I ask what's changed? We've been monitoring their security for years without incident. Everything's changed, I said simply. Arya knows who I am to her now. And apparently, someone else does too. Reynolds nodded, understanding the implications. I'll put our best people on it. In the meantime, would you like me to arrange for Ms. Cole and her mother to be moved to a secure location? I considered this. Not yet. That would alert whoever sent this that we're taking their threats seriously. For now, just watch them. Closely. After Reynolds left, I sat alone in my office, the container of chocolate cake still in my hands. Such a normal thing, a family dessert, shared after a meal together. The kind of simple ritual I'd never experienced growing up, the kind Arya wanted us to have regularly now. But how could we have any kind of normal family life with this threat hanging over us? My phone rang, the private investigator. Mr. Calder, he began without preamble, I've been looking into Ms. Cole's recent activities as requested. In the past week, she's accessed several databases through her work at the nonprofit. Searches related to a homicide in Queens 13 years ago. My stomach tightened. What else? She visited the precinct that handled the original investigation. Spoke to a detective who's now retired. And she's been in contact with a crime reporter at the Times. A reporter? Alarm shot through me. What did she tell them? Unknown at this point. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I ended the call, my mind racing. Arya was digging, not just accepting what I'd told her but verifying it independently. Talking to police. Planning to meet with reporters. No wonder someone had noticed and felt threatened enough to send that warning. But who? After 13 years, who would care enough about David Cole's death to threaten his daughter? The answer came to me with sickening clarity just as my third call was returned. It's been a while, Mr. Calder, said the gravelly voice on the other end of the line. Must be serious if you're calling this number. It is, I confirmed. I need information about the Preston family. A pause. The Prestons? That's ancient history. Not anymore, I said grimly. Someone's threatening my niece over what happened 13 years ago. I need to know if the Prestons are involved. Your niece. Surprise colored his tone. I wasn't aware you had family. Few people are, I said. I'd like to keep it that way. Understood. He paused. The Prestons sold their company 5 years ago. Retired to Florida. But their son, James, still runs some of their old operations. James Preston, I repeated. The name triggered a distant memory, a young man at his parents' house the night David had burst in, watching the chaos with cold, calculating eyes. What's he involved in these days? Officially? Real estate development. Unofficially? The same things his father dabbled in. Money laundering. Loan sharking. The family business. Would he have reason to be concerned about someone investigating a 13-year-old homicide? A long pause. If that homicide is connected to his family, absolutely. The Prestons have always been careful about keeping their hands clean publicly. Thank you, I said. One more thing. I need protection for 2 people. The best you have. Names? Serena and Arya Cole. The same Coles from 13 years ago, he asked, surprise evident in his voice. Yes. Consider it done, he said. And Mr. Calder? Whatever you're planning, be careful. The Prestons don't forgive, and they don't forget. I ended the call, the pieces falling into place. James Preston. Of course. He'd been there that night, had seen David's desperation, had witnessed his father call me for help. Had perhaps even known about the men I'd sent after David. And now, 13 years later, Arya's questions threatened to unearth connections the Prestons had worked hard to bury. I needed to warn her. To stop her from meeting that reporter. To protect her from dangers she couldn't possibly understand. My phone rang again, Reynolds. Sir, we've traced the text. It came from a burner phone, but we've triangulated the location. It was sent from outside Ms. Cole's apartment building. Ice formed in my veins. Is someone still watching the building? Yes, sir. One of our men spotted a car with 2 occupants. They've been there for several hours. Do not engage, I instructed. Just monitor. I'm on my way there now. Sir, I strongly advise against. Have a team meet me there, I cut him off. Armed but discreet. I ended the call and headed for the elevator, my decision made. No more hiding. No more distance. No more protecting myself at the expense of those I cared about. It was time to be the uncle, the family Arya needed me to be. I arrived at Arya and Serena's building to find Reynolds waiting in the lobby, his expression grave. The situation has escalated, sir, he said quietly. Ms. Cole left the building approximately 20 minutes ago. Left. Alarm shot through me. Where did she go? Unknown. She exited alone on foot. The men in the car followed her. And you let them? I demanded, fury rising. We have a man trailing both parties, Reynolds assured me. But we didn't want to intervene without your instruction. I pulled out my phone, dialing Arya's number. Straight to voicemail. I tried Serena next. Roman? She answered on the first ring, her voice tense. What's wrong? Where's Arya? I demanded without preamble. She went out. Said she needed air after your conversation. Worry colored her tone. Why? What's happening? Someone's following her, I said bluntly. Someone dangerous. Connected to David's death. Serena's sharp intake of breath was audible. Oh God. The Prestons. So she knew. Of course she did. Serena had always been more perceptive than I gave her credit for. I think so, I confirmed. James Preston, specifically. James, she whispered. He always blamed David for exposing their family's connections. Blamed me too after David died. Why didn't you tell me he'd threatened you? I demanded. He didn't, not directly. Just implications. Warnings. It was years ago, Roman. I thought it was over. It's not over, I said grimly. Not while Arya is asking questions. Not while she's planning to meet with reporters. Reporters. Shock colored her voice. What are you talking about? She has a meeting scheduled with a crime reporter tomorrow. About David's death. She didn't tell me, Serena said, her voice small. Roman, what do we do? First, we find her, I said firmly. Then we get you both somewhere safe. And then I deal with James Preston once and for all. How will you find her? Fear made her voice shake. If she's not answering her phone. I'll find her, I promised. Stay where you are. I'm sending security up to you. I ended the call, turning to Reynolds. Any update on her location? He checked his phone. Our man reports she's headed toward Riverside Park. The men following her are maintaining distance, but still on her trail. Riverside Park. At night, my blood ran cold at the thought of Arya alone there, unaware of the danger following her. Get the car, I instructed. And call for backup to meet us at the park entrance. 10 minutes later, we pulled up to Riverside Park. Reynolds' phone buzzed with an update. She's by the water, he reported. Sitting on a bench. The men are hanging back, watching. How many? Just the two from the car. I made a quick decision. Have your men secure the perimeter. No one else enters the park. I'm going in alone. Sir, that's not advisable. It's not a request, I cut him off. These men are watching for security, for obvious protection. They won't expect me to approach alone. Reynolds looked unhappy but nodded. We'll be close. One signal from you, and we move in. I entered the park, my heart pounding in a way it hadn't since those early days on Wall Street when everything I'd built hung by a thread. But this was different. This wasn't about money or power or control. This was about Arya. About family. I spotted her before she saw me, a solitary figure on a bench overlooking the Hudson, her posture rigid with tension. Even from a distance, I could see she was upset, her shoulders shaking slightly in a way that suggested she might be crying. I approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. Arya. She whirled around, surprise and then wariness crossing her face. Roman? What are you doing here? Looking for you, I said simply, sitting beside her on the bench. We need to talk. I think we've talked enough for one night, she said, turning back to the water. I need space to process everything. Space is a luxury we don't have right now, I said quietly. You're being followed. That got her attention. What? 2 men have been watching your apartment. They followed you here. I kept my voice calm, matter of fact. They're connected to the Prestons. Her eyes widened. How do you know that? Because they sent me this. I showed her the text message. After I left your apartment tonight. She read it, her face straining of color. They're threatening me? Because I've been asking questions. Yes. I glanced around discreetly, spotting the two men lingering near a cluster of trees about 50 yards away. And they're here now. Fear flashed across her face, quickly replaced by determination. What do they want? For you to stop digging into your father's death. For the past to stay buried. I met her gaze directly. The Prestons have connections to organized crime, Arya. Connections your father discovered when he worked for them. Connections that could still damage them today if exposed. And my meeting with the reporter tomorrow, she realized. They know about that. Yes. I studied her face. Why didn't you tell me you were investigating on your own? Going to the police? Planning to talk to the press? She lifted her chin defiantly. Because I needed to verify your story. To make sure you were telling me the truth this time. The words stung, but I couldn't blame her. And what did you find? Enough to know you weren't lying about how Dad died, she admitted. But there are still gaps. Things that don't add up. Like what? Like why the case went cold so quickly. Why no one was ever arrested despite witnesses. Why the detective I spoke to seemed nervous when I mentioned the Prestons. She fixed me with a penetrating gaze. What aren't you telling me, Roman? I sighed, knowing the time for half-truths was over. The investigation was shut down because I made it go away, I admitted. I had connections in the department. Paid the right people to classify it as gang violence, to stop asking questions. Why would you do that, she demanded. If you didn't kill him. To protect you and your mother, I said firmly. If the full truth had come out about David's theft, about the Prestons' criminal connections, about my involvement, it would have put you both in the crosshairs. The men who killed David would have come after you next. So you covered it up, she said, her voice hollow. Made it disappear. Yes, I acknowledged. And I'd do it again to keep you safe. She was silent for a long moment, processing this. And now? These men following me, what do we do? First, we get you somewhere safe, I said. I have security surrounding the park. They'll escort us to a secure location where you and your mother will stay until I resolve this. Resolve it how? Suspicion colored her tone. By making it clear to James Preston that threatening you was the biggest mistake of his life, I said, my voice hardening. Arya studied me, seeing perhaps for the first time the man I truly was, not just the billionaire benefactor, not just the reluctant uncle, but someone capable of both protection and destruction. You'd do that for me, she asked quietly. Take on the Prestons? Without hesitation, I said simply. Something shifted in her expression, a realization, an understanding. That's what family does, isn't it? Protects each other. No matter the cost. Yes, I agreed. That's what family does. She took a deep breath, then nodded once, decisively. Okay, let's go. As we stood to leave, movement caught my eye. The two men were approaching, no longer bothering to maintain their distance. Stay behind me, I instructed Arya quietly. Mr. Calder, one of the men called as they drew closer. Fancy meeting you here. I positioned myself between them and Arya. I'm not in the mood for games. Tell James that if he has a message for me, he can deliver it himself. The taller of the two men smiled unpleasantly. Oh, he has a message all right. But it's for the girl. He looked past me to Arya. Your father should have kept his mouth shut 13 years ago. You'd be wise to learn from his mistake. I felt Arya stiffen behind me but was impressed when she spoke, her voice steady despite the circumstances. My father was killed for what he knew. Threatening me won't bury the truth. Brave, the man commented. Just like your old man. Look where it got him. That's enough, I said coldly. You've delivered your message. Now leave. The second man stepped forward. We're not done yet. Mr. Preston wants assurance that tomorrow's meeting with the reporter won't happen. It won't, I said firmly. Roman, Arya began to protest, but I cut her off with a slight shake of my head. And he wants all copies of whatever evidence she's gathered, the first man continued. All of it. By tomorrow noon. Fine, I agreed, wanting only to get Arya safely away. Now go. The men exchanged glances, clearly not expecting such easy compliance. Just like that. Just like that, I confirmed. I value my niece's safety above all else. Tell James I'll meet his demands. The word niece hung in the air between us. The men's expressions shifted, surprise and then calculation crossing their faces. Niece, the taller one repeated. Well, that explains a lot. Mr. Preston will be interested to hear about this. Family connection. Tell him whatever you want, I said dismissively. Just stay away from Arya. The men backed away slowly. Noon tomorrow, Mr. Calder. Or the next conversation won't be nearly so pleasant. Once they were out of earshot, Arya turned to me, anger flashing in her eyes. You can't seriously be considering giving in to their demands. Canceling the meeting, handing over my research. Of course not, I said quietly. But I needed them to think I was complying to get you out of here safely. Then what's the plan? I pulled out my phone, sending a pre-arranged signal to Reynolds. Within seconds, I saw my security team moving into position around the park perimeter. The plan, I said, is to get you and your mother to my private residence in Connecticut tonight. It's secure, isolated, and unknown to anyone connected to the Prestons. And then I deal with James Preston, I said simply. How? Arya pressed as we walked quickly toward the park exit, my security team closing ranks around us. What are you going to do? Whatever is necessary to ensure your safety, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. Reynolds met us at the car, his expression grim. Sir, we've lost visual on the two men. They disappeared into a vehicle on Riverside Drive. Expected, I said. They've delivered their message. They'll report back to Preston. And give us time to move, Arya realized. I nodded, impressed by her quick understanding. Exactly. Reynolds, what's the status on Ms. Cole Sr.? Our team is with her now, sir. She's packing essentials as instructed. Good. Have the helicopter ready at the East River heliport in 30 minutes. I want them both out of the city tonight. Yes, sir. As we slid into the back of my armored SUV, Arya turned to me. Helicopter? Private residence in Connecticut? You're really going all out. When it comes to your safety, I don't take half measures, I said simply. She studied me in the dim light of the car interior. This is what you've been doing all along, isn't it? Protecting us from the shadows. Making sure we were safe without ever letting us know the full extent of the danger. Yes, I admitted. The Prestons have always been a threat, however distant. I've monitored them for years, made sure they stayed away from you and your mother. Until I started asking questions, she said, understanding dawning. Until I wished for the truth. The truth has consequences, Arya, I said quietly. I tried to warn you. Would you have preferred I remained ignorant? She challenged. Living a life built on lies? If it kept you safe? Yes, I said honestly. But that's no longer an option. Now we deal with the reality we have, not the one I would have chosen. She fell silent as the car wound through the city streets toward her apartment building. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Thank you for coming for me tonight. For not sending security, but coming yourself. The simple gratitude caught me off guard. Your family, I said, echoing our earlier conversation. That's what family does. A small smile touched her lips. You're learning. 90 minutes later, the helicopter touched down on the private landing pad at my Connecticut estate. The sprawling property, set on 50 acres of woodland, was one of my most closely guarded secrets, a refuge I'd created years ago but rarely visited. The house itself was a modern fortress disguised as a luxury retreat, with security features that would make most military installations envious. Serena emerged from the helicopter first, her face tight with worry until she spotted Arya. The relief in her eyes as she embraced her daughter spoke volumes about the fear she'd been carrying. Are you all right? She asked, holding Arya at arm's length to examine her. I'm fine, Mom, Arya assured her. Thanks to Roman. Serena turned to me, gratitude and something deeper in her expression. Thank you for bringing her home safe. Home. The word struck me oddly. This wasn't home, not for any of us. Yet as I watched them together, I realized that home wasn't necessarily a place. It was people. Connection. Family. Let's get inside, I said, uncomfortable with the direction of my thoughts. It's been a long night, and we have much to discuss. The house was fully staffed and prepared, despite the late hour and short notice. A testament to the efficiency money could buy. As we settled in the main living room, with its wall of windows overlooking the moonlit forest, I outlined what would happen next. "You'll both stay here until the situation with the Prestons is resolved," I explained. "The staff is discreet and the security is impenetrable. No one knows about this property except my most trusted people." "And what about you?" Arya asked. "Will you stay too?" I shook my head. "I need to return to the city to deal with James Preston." "How?" Serena asked, worry evident in her voice. "These people are dangerous, Roman. They've killed before." "So have I said quietly. In a manner of speaking. The words hung in the air between us. Not a confession of murder, but an acknowledgement of the ruthlessness I was capable of when necessary. "What does that mean?" Arya pressed. I considered how much to reveal. They deserve the truth, but did they need every detail? "It means," I said carefully, "that I've spent years building not just financial power, but leverage. Information. Connections. The kind that can destroy someone like James Preston without a drop of blood being spilled." "Blackmail," Arya said, her tone neutral. "I prefer to think of it as mutually assured destruction," I corrected. "Preston threatens what's mine. I threaten what's his." "And what does he value enough to back off?" she asked. "His freedom," I said simply. "I have evidence of the Prestons' criminal activities going back decades. Money laundering, loan sharking, even murder. I've kept it as insurance, never intending to use it unless absolutely necessary." "And now it's necessary," Serena said quietly. "Yes." I met her gaze steadily. "Because he threatened Arya. Because he crossed a line I cannot allow to be crossed." "Why didn't you use this information years ago?" Arya asked. "After Dad died? You could have put the Prestons away then." "It wasn't that simple," I explained. "Using the information would have exposed my own involvement, not just in David's death, but in certain business dealings that wouldn't withstand scrutiny. It would have put you both at risk from others in their organization seeking revenge. The cleanest solution was to make the problem disappear quietly." "And now?" Serena asked. "Now the calculus has changed," I said. "James Preston has made a critical error in judgment. He's assumed that because I've kept our connection secret all these years, I value my privacy more than your safety." A cold smile touched my lips. "He's about to learn how wrong he is." Arya studied me, a new understanding in her eyes. "This is why you were reluctant to acknowledge me publicly, isn't it? Not just because of normal security concerns or privacy, but because you knew the Prestons were still out there. Still a threat." "Partly," I acknowledged. "Though I didn't anticipate them moving against you directly. That was an oversight on my part." "So what happens now?" she asked. "You go back to the city, confront Preston, and then what?" "We just go back to our lives as if nothing happened." I hesitated, knowing we'd reached the moment of truth. "That depends on what you want, Arya. On what you both want." "What do you mean?" Serena asked. "I mean that once this is resolved, we have a choice to make," I said carefully. "We can return to the arrangement we've had for 13 years, my support from a distance, our connection kept private. Or, Arya prompted when I paused. "Or we can be what you wished for," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "A family. Publicly acknowledged. No more secrets, no more distance." The offer hung in the air between us, weighted with implications. Arya looked to her mother, a silent communication passing between them. "Is that even possible now?" Serena asked quietly. "After all these years?" "It won't be easy," I admitted. "There will be questions. Scrutiny. Adjustments for all of us." "But you're willing to try?" Arya pressed. "Truly willing?" "Not just saying what you think I want to hear." I considered the question carefully, wanting my answer to be honest. The prospect of publicly acknowledging Arya as my niece, of stepping into the role of family after so many years of distance, it terrified me in ways that business rivals and physical threats never could. And yet, sitting here with them, I felt something I'd rarely experienced in my life: belonging. "Yes," I said finally. "I'm willing to try. If that's what you both want." Arya's expression softened. "It is. It's what I've always wanted, even when I didn't know exactly what I was missing." Serena reached across the space between us, taking my hand in a rare gesture of physical connection. Then it's settled. Once this is over, we move forward. Together. The simple touch, the certainty in her voice, unlocked something in my chest, a tightness I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it was there. Together, I agreed, the word feeling foreign yet right on my tongue. Arya stood suddenly, her expression resolute. But first, we deal with the Prestons. And I don't mean just you, Roman. We deal with them. Arya, Serena began, concern evident in her voice. No, Mom. Arya cut her off gently. I'm not sitting this out. This started because I wished for the truth about my father. Because I started asking questions. I won't hide while Roman risks himself to clean up the mess I helped create. I studied her, seeing David's determination in the set of her jaw, but Serena's wisdom in her eyes. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we use what I've already gathered, she said. The research, the interviews, the evidence. Not just your blackmail material, but my legitimate investigation. We go to the authorities together, you with your evidence of the Prestons' crimes, me with my investigation into my father's murder. That would mean exposing everything, I pointed out. My connection to David. My role in his death. The cover-up afterward. Yes, she acknowledged. But with proper legal counsel, your cooperation in bringing down a criminal enterprise would mitigate any consequences you might face. I couldn't help but smile slightly. You've thought this through. Princeton education, she reminded me, a hint of humor in her voice. And I've had a week to consider all angles since you told me the truth. I glanced at Serena, who was watching her daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. What do you think? I think, Serena said slowly, that Arya is right. Hiding has protected us for 13 years, but at what cost? Living in fear, keeping secrets, always looking over our shoulders. Maybe it's time to face this head-on. All of us together. Their united front surprised me and impressed me. For years, I'd seen myself as their protector, making decisions I believed were in their best interest. Now they were claiming agency in their own lives, demanding to be partners rather than protections. It's risky, I warned. Once we start down this path, there's no turning back. Some risks are worth taking, Arya said simply. Isn't that what made you a billionaire? Knowing which risks to take. I couldn't argue with her logic. All right, I conceded. We'll do this together. But we do it my way, carefully, strategically, with every possible protection in place. Agreed, Arya said, satisfaction evident in her voice. When do we start? We already have, I said, pulling out my phone. While we've been talking, my team has been gathering everything we need. By morning, we'll be ready to move against Preston. And then? Serena asked. And then, I said, allowing myself to imagine it for the first time, we begin again. As a family. The word no longer felt foreign or frightening. It felt like a promise. A future. A wish finally coming true. As Serena and Arya settled into their rooms for what remained of the night, I stood at the window, looking out at the moonlit forest surrounding the property. For 13 years, I'd kept my distance, believing it was the only way to protect them. Now I was preparing to step into the light, to claim them publicly as my family, to face whatever consequences came with that decision. It should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something unexpected, peace. As if after a lifetime of running, I was finally turning to face what had always been chasing me, not danger or enemies, but connection, belonging, love. My phone buzzed with a message from Reynolds, all preparations in place. Ready to move at your command. I typed back a simple response, tomorrow. We end this. Then I added something I'd never included in a business communication before, thank you. Because that's what family would do. And I was learning, step by step, how to be family. Dawn broke over the Connecticut estate, painting the forest in hues of gold and amber. I hadn't slept, spending the night finalizing preparations with my team in the city. By the time Serena and Arya joined me for breakfast, everything was in place. You look tired, Serena observed, pouring coffee with the same care she'd shown in my penthouse for 13 years. I'm fine, I assured her, accepting the cup gratefully. Just focused. Arya studied me across the table, her expression thoughtful. What's the plan? I set down my coffee, shifting into the mode that had made me a legend in business, precise, strategic, leaving nothing to chance. At 9 o'clock, James Preston will receive a call from his banker informing him that certain irregularities have been detected in his accounts. By 9:15, his lawyer will contact him about a subpoena from the SEC regarding questionable transactions. By 9:30, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal will call requesting comment on a story they're running tomorrow about the Preston family's alleged criminal connections. None of which is real, Arya guessed. All of which will become real if he doesn't cooperate, I corrected. The banker, lawyer, and reporter are all, let's say, open to persuasion. Bribed, Serena translated flatly. Compensated for their cooperation in a matter of family security, I said smoothly. By 10 o'clock, Preston will be desperate to contain the situation. That's when I'll call, offering to meet. Where? Arya asked. My office. My territory. Where I have complete control of the environment. And what will you offer him? Serena pressed. A choice, I said simply. Cease all interest in you both, sign a binding non-disclosure agreement regarding our family connection, and provide a full confession about his family's role in David's death, or watch his empire crumble and spend the next 20 years in federal prison. You think he'll take the deal? Arya looked skeptical. Men like Preston value two things above all else, money and freedom. I'm offering him the chance to keep both, provided he gives us what we need. Which is closure, I said, meeting her gaze. Justice for your father, however belated. And safety for you both going forward. Arya nodded slowly, processing this. And if he refuses? A cold smile touched my lips. Then I destroy him. Completely and without mercy. The ruthlessness in my voice seemed to startle them both. A reminder that beneath the veneer of civilization I'd cultivated, there remained something harder, something forged in the crucible of abandonment and survival. I'm coming with you, Arya said suddenly. Absolutely not, I replied immediately. It's too dangerous. I'm not asking permission, she said, her tone matching my own in determination. This is about my father. My life. My future. I deserve to be there. Arya, Serena began, concern evident in her voice. Mom, I need to do this, Arya said, turning to her mother. For 13 years, decisions have been made about our lives without our input. I won't let that happen anymore. I studied her, seeing not just David's determination, but my own stubbornness reflected back at me. Family traits, passing through bloodlines neither time nor distance could sever. If you come, I said finally, you follow my lead. Completely. No questions, no arguments, no improvisation. My word is law in that room. Understood. Understood, she agreed without hesitation. I turned to Serena. And you? She shook her head. My place is behind the scenes. Always has been. A small smile touched her lips. Someone needs to be ready to pick up the pieces if this goes sideways. The simple statement revealed more about Serena's role in our unusual family dynamic than perhaps she intended. For 13 years, she had been the steady center around which Arya and I orbited, keeping us connected when distance threatened to pull us apart, smoothing rough edges, anticipating needs before they were voiced. Very well, I conceded. Arya comes with me. But you stay here, where it's safe. Serena nodded, though something in her expression suggested she had her own plans, regardless of my directives. After 13 years as my house manager, she knew me better than perhaps anyone alive, including when to appear to acquiesce while pursuing her own agenda. When do we leave? Arya asked. I checked my watch. The helicopter will be ready in 30 minutes. We should arrive in the city by 8:30, giving us time to prepare before Preston receives his first call. As Arya left to get ready, Serena remained at the table, her eyes fixed on me with an intensity one rarely saw from her. What? I asked. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. Not just confronting Preston, but everything that comes after. Being a family. Being an uncle to Arya in more than just financial support. The question deserved honest consideration. I'm not sure I know how, I admitted. But I'm willing to learn. She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. That's all any of us can do, Roman. Learn as we go. Together. The simple touch, the certainty in her voice, studied something in me that had been unsettled since Arya first walked into my boardroom demanding truth. Whatever happened today with Preston, whatever came after as we navigated our new reality as a family, we would face it together. For the first time in my life, the prospect of not being alone didn't terrify me. It comforted me. The Calder Ventures building dominated the Manhattan skyline, a testament to the empire I'd built from nothing. As our car pulled into the private underground garage, I turned to Arya. "Last chance to reconsider," I said. "Once we're upstairs, once Preston arrives, there's no turning back." She met my gaze steadily. "I've spent my entire life in a holding pattern, Roman, living with secrets and half-truths. I'm done turning back." Her resolve impressed me. "Very well. Remember our agreement in that room. My word is law." "I remember," she assured me. We rode the private elevator to the executive floor in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Reynolds met us as the doors opened, his expression professionally neutral despite the unusual circumstance of seeing me arrive with Arya. "Everything is in place, sir," he reported. "The calls have been made as scheduled. Mr. Preston's assistant reports he's extremely agitated and has cleared his morning calendar." "Good," I said. "And the recording equipment in the conference room?" "Tested and operational, sir. Both audio and video." "Excellent." I turned to Arya. "Wait in my office until I call for you. I want to speak with Preston alone first." She looked like she might argue, then nodded. "Fine. But don't start without me." As Reynolds escorted her to my private office, I entered the conference room to review the final preparations. The space was designed to intimidate floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city I'd conquered, a massive table of polished black marble, chairs positioned so that visitors faced both the glare of the windows and me. A room built for power plays and decisive victories. At precisely 10 o'clock, my phone rang. "Preston, right on schedule." "Calder," I answered, my voice deliberately casual. "What the hell are you doing?" Preston demanded without preamble, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "My banker, my lawyer, the journal, you think I don't know you're behind this?" "I have no idea what you're talking about, James," I said smoothly. "But it sounds like you're having a difficult morning. Perhaps we should meet to discuss whatever seems to be troubling you." "Cut the crap, Calder. This is about the Cole girl, isn't it? About her poking around in ancient history. Why don't you come to my office and we can discuss it face to face?" I suggested. 11 o'clock. A pause, then, "Fine. 11. This better be worth my time." "Oh, I assure you," I said coldly, "it will be the most important meeting of your life." I ended the call and summoned Reynolds. "Preston will be here at 11. Standard security protocols, but I want him to reach this floor without incident. No searches, no delays. I want him comfortable until the moment he isn't." "Understood, sir." Reynolds hesitated. "And Miss Cole, bring her in 10 minutes before Preston arrives. I want her prepared." As Reynolds left to make the arrangements, I stood at the window, looking out over the city. For 13 years, I'd operated in shadows, pulling strings from a distance, protecting Serena and Arya without ever fully claiming them. Today would change everything, not just with Preston, but with the two women who had somehow become the closest thing to family I'd ever known. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange calm. As if after a lifetime of running, I was finally turning to face what had always been chasing me. At 10:50, Arya joined me in the conference room. She'd changed from the casual clothes she'd worn at breakfast into a simple but elegant black dress that made her look both professional and formidable. "You look prepared for battle," I observed. "Isn't that what this is?" she countered. "Of a sort," I acknowledged. "Though the weapons are different from what your father faced." She took a seat at the table, not in one of the visitor chairs, but at my right hand, the position of a trusted lieutenant. "Or family. What should I expect?" she asked. "Preston will be angry, defensive. He'll deny everything at first, then try to negotiate when he realizes the strength of our position." I sat beside her. "He may try to provoke you, to use your emotional connection to your father against you. Don't let him." "I won't," she promised. "When he arrives, let me lead the conversation. Don't speak unless I indicate you should. And whatever happens, whatever is said, Remember that we hold all the leverage here. She nodded, her expression resolute. I'm ready. At precisely 11 o'clock, Reynolds escorted James Preston into the conference room. He was much as I remembered him from 13 years ago, tall, expensively dressed, with the cold eyes of a predator and the forced smile of someone accustomed to getting his way. That smile faltered when he saw Arya. What is this? He demanded, looking between us. I thought we were meeting alone, Calder. Change of plans, I said smoothly, not rising from my seat. I believe you know Miss Cole. Or at least, you know enough about her to have her followed and threatened. Preston's expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Please, I said dismissively. Let's not waste time with denials. We both know why you're here. Your family's criminal enterprises are at risk because Miss Cole has been asking questions about her father's death. Questions that lead directly to your doorstep. This is absurd, Preston scoffed, but I noted the tightness around his eyes. I came because you're apparently trying to sabotage my business with false allegations. False? I raised an eyebrow. The SEC doesn't think so. Neither does the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, which will receive an anonymous tip this afternoon unless we reach an understanding. That got his attention. He sank into a chair across from us, his facade of confidence cracking. What do you want, Calder? Several things, I said calmly. First, a full account of your family's involvement in David Cole's death. Second, your signed confession regarding the same, to be held in secure storage unless you violate our agreement. Third, your permanent disinterest in Ms. Cole and her mother. And finally, your absolute silence regarding Ms. Cole's relationship to me. Preston's gaze darted between us, understanding dawning. Relationship? So the rumors are true. She's what to you exactly? Mistress? Secret daughter. Beside me, I felt Arya stiffen. I placed a hand on her arm, a silent reminder of our agreement. Miss Cole is my niece, I said, the words feeling both foreign and right on my tongue. David Cole was my half-brother. Preston's eyes widened slightly. Well, the great Roman Calder has family after all. How touching. His gaze shifted to Arya, something ugly in his expression. Does she know the whole story, I wonder? About Daddy Dearest and how he ended up with a bullet in his chest. I know everything, Arya said, her voice steady despite my warning about speaking. About my father's theft. About Roman sending men after him. About your family's loan sharking operation that my father discovered while working for you. Preston's smile was cold. Do you know your father was skimming from that operation too? That he wasn't just stealing from his brother, but from my family as well? That he threatened to expose our business unless we paid him off. I felt Arya tense beside me but was impressed when she didn't react visibly to this new information. Your father was a desperate man, Preston continued, clearly enjoying the chance to wound her. A thief, a blackmailer, and ultimately a fool. He thought he could play both sides, steal from Calder, blackmail my family, and somehow walk away clean. That's enough, I said sharply. No, I don't think it is, Preston countered. If she wants the truth, let's give her all of it. Let's tell her how her father came to our house that night, demanding more money. How he threatened to go to the authorities if we didn't pay. How he pulled a gun when my father refused. Arya's hand found mine under the table, gripping it tightly. I returned the pressure, a silent show of support. Your men shot him, she said, her voice remarkably steady. On a rainy night in Queens. Left him to die in the street. After he tried to shoot my father, Preston corrected. Self-defense, technically. Though I admit the location of the final confrontation was unfortunate. Messy. We would have preferred a more discreet resolution. Like the one you're hoping for today? I interjected smoothly. A discreet resolution to your current problem? Preston's eyes narrowed. What exactly are you offering, Calder? I slid a folder across the table. Inside you'll find a non-disclosure agreement regarding Ms. Cole's relationship to me, a confession for you to sign regarding your family's role in David Cole's death, and documentation of what will be released to authorities if you fail to comply with either. Preston opened the folder, scanning the documents with the practiced eye of someone accustomed to legal maneuvering. This confession would implicate me in a homicide. A confession that remains private unless you break our agreement, I clarified. Sign, and the SEC inquiry disappears. The FBI tip never materializes. The Wall Street Journal story is killed. Your empire remains intact. And if I refuse? I smiled coldly. Then by this time tomorrow, you'll be facing federal charges for financial crimes, a homicide investigation reopened with new evidence, and the complete dismantling of everything your family has built over 3 generations. Preston looked between us, calculation evident in his expression. You're bluffing. You can't expose me without exposing yourself. Your connection to David Cole, your role in his death, it would all come out. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But I've built my life expecting the worst, preparing for every contingency. Have you? Are you prepared for federal prison, James? For asset seizure? For watching everything you've inherited turn to dust? Uncertainty flickered in his eyes. What guarantee do I have that you'll keep your end of the bargain? That these documents won't find their way to authorities regardless. The same guarantee I've operated on for 13 years, I said. Self-interest. Your silence protects my privacy. My discretion preserves your freedom. And what about her? Preston nodded toward Arya. What's to stop her from going to the authorities anyway? From continuing her little investigation? I turned to Arya, giving her the signal we'd discussed. Her moment to speak. Justice for my father doesn't necessarily mean your destruction, Mr. Preston, she said, her voice steady and measured. It means acknowledgement of what happened. Accountability. And assurance that my mother and I can live our lives without fear of reprisal for simply existing. Pretty words, Preston scoffed. But you're Calder's blood. I doubt forgiveness runs in your veins any more than it does in his. You're right, she agreed, surprising him. I am Calder's blood. Which means I understand leverage, negotiation, and mutually beneficial arrangements. Sign the confession. Honor the agreement. And this ends today. Preston studied her with new respect, then turned back to me. She's definitely your niece, Calder. Same cold calculation behind those eyes. Do we have a deal? I pressed, ignoring the observation. Preston stared at the documents for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he reached for a pen. We have a deal. But know this, if either of you ever moves against me or my family, all bets are off. Everything comes out. Everything. Understood, I said calmly. Though I should clarify one point, this isn't just about Ms. Cole and myself. It's about her mother as well. Serena Cole remains under my protection. Any move against her is a move against me. Preston's pen hesitated above the paper. The housekeeper? What is she to you, Calder? Another secret relation. She's family, I said simply, offering no further explanation. Something like understanding flickered in Preston's eyes. I see. Well, that explains the extraordinary measures you've taken all these years. He signed the confession with a flourish, then the non-disclosure agreement. There. Satisfied. Almost. I slid another document across the table. One final item. A financial settlement for the Cole family. Compensation for 13 years of living under threat, however distant. Preston's eyebrows rose as he saw the figure. $5 million? That's extortion. That's the price of true closure, I corrected. Consider it an investment in your continued freedom and prosperity. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then, with a bitter smile, he signed the final document. You always were a ruthless bastard, Calder. I see it runs in the family. Beside me, Arya remained perfectly composed, giving nothing away. Only the slight tremor in her hand, still clasped in mine beneath the table, betrayed her emotion. We're done here, I said, gathering the signed documents. Reynolds will see you out. Preston stood, straightening his tie in a gesture of recovered dignity. One question, Calder, before I go. Why now? After 13 years of shadows and secrets, why bring this all into the open? I glanced at Arya, then back to Preston. Because some promises are worth keeping, no matter the cost. He studied us for a moment longer, then nodded once, not in friendship, but in the reluctant respect one predator gives another. For your sake, I hope you never regret this decision. After Preston left, escorted by Reynolds, Arya and I sat in silence for a long moment. The tension that had filled the room gradually dissipated, leaving in its wake a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. Is it really over? She finally asked. Just like that. The immediate threat, yes, I said. Preston will honor the agreement because it serves his interests to do so. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. And the confession? The settlement. The confession goes into a secure vault to be released only if he violates our agreement. The settlement will be transferred to accounts in your and your mother's names by end of day. I hesitated, then added, it's a fraction of what I would have given you anyway, had you asked. Consider it an advance on your inheritance. Her eyes widened slightly. Inheritance. You're my only living blood relative, Arya, I said simply. Who else would I leave my empire to? She shook her head slowly, as if the thought had never occurred to her. I never wanted your money, Roman. I just wanted the truth. A connection. Family. And now you have all three, I observed. Though I suspect the truth wasn't quite what you expected. No, she admitted. Learning my father was a thief and a blackmailer wasn't exactly the revelation I'd hoped for. Your father was more than his mistakes, I said quietly. He was desperate, yes. Flawed, certainly. But in his final moments, his only thought was for you and your mother. That counts for something. She nodded, tears finally filling her eyes now that the confrontation was over. Thank you. For telling me the truth. For facing Preston with me. For everything. I squeezed her hand once more before releasing it. That's what family does. The phrase had become something of a mantra between us, a reminder of the connection we were building, the roles we were learning to inhabit. We should call Mom, Arya said, wiping away her tears. Let her know it's over. I reached for my phone, but before I could dial, it rang. Serena. Is it done? She asked without preamble when I answered. Yes, I confirmed. Preston signed everything. The threat is neutralized. Her sigh of relief was audible. And Arya? Is she all right? I'm fine, Mom, Arya called, leaning toward the phone. We did it. Together. Good, Serena said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Then it's time for the next step. Next step. I repeated, confused. What next step? The one I've been preparing while you two confronted Preston, she said cryptically. Come home and see. Home. The word still felt foreign when applied to my penthouse, yet somehow right when spoken in Serena's voice. We're on our way, I promised. As we rode the elevator down to the garage, Arya turned to me. What do you think she's done? With Serena, it's impossible to predict, I said, a hint of fondness in my voice. In 13 years, she's never ceased to surprise me. She's good at that, Arya agreed. Taking care of things behind the scenes. Making everything work without anyone noticing the effort. A skill I've come to value more than I can express, I admitted. The drive back to my penthouse was quiet, both of us processing the morning's events. Preston's capitulation. The revelation about David's blackmail attempt. The finality of the signed confession. The acknowledgement, at last, of our family connection. When we arrived, the penthouse was transformed. The usually pristine, somewhat sterile space was filled with photographs, dozens of them, arranged carefully on tables and shelves throughout the living room. Photos of Arya growing up. Photos of Serena. Even a few old pictures of David that I'd never seen before. And in the center of it all stood Serena, watching our reactions with a mixture of nervousness and determination. What is all this? I asked, taking in the display. Family, she said simply. Our family. The one we've been all along, even when we couldn't acknowledge it. Arya moved through the room slowly, touching frames, examining images of her younger self in places I recognized: her school graduations, dance recitals, birthdays. Events I'd funded but never attended. You kept all these? She asked her mother. Every one, Serena confirmed. I always hoped someday they'd find their proper place. All together, where they belong. I picked up a photo I'd never seen before, Arya at perhaps 10 years old, sitting in my library, surrounded by books. I remembered the day vaguely, one of the rare times she'd been in my home while Serena worked. I'd been away on business, returning to find her asleep on my sofa, a book of financial theory far beyond her years open on her lap. You took this? I asked Serena. She nodded. You came home early that day. Found her sleeping. Instead of waking her, you covered her with your jacket and sat in the chair across from her, watching over her until she woke naturally. The memory returned fully now, the strange protectiveness I'd felt seeing her there, vulnerable in sleep. The unfamiliar warmth in my chest when she'd awakened and smiled at me without fear or expectation. "I didn't know you saw that," I said quietly. "I see everything, Roman," she replied with a small smile. "It's part of my job." "No," I corrected gently. "It's part of who you are. Who you've always been for us." Arya joined us, holding another photograph, this one of the three of us at her high school graduation. I remembered the day clearly. I'd attended briefly, watching from a distance as she received her diploma, then joined them for a quick, private congratulation before returning to work. In the photo, my discomfort was evident in my stiff posture, but there was something else too, a pride I hadn't been able to fully conceal. "We've been a family all along," Arya said softly. "Just a broken one. Fragmented. Held together by secrets and obligations instead of honesty and love. Until now," Serena added. I looked around at the photographs, the visual evidence of 13 years of connection, however imperfect. "Until now," I agreed. Serena gestured to the dining table, set for 3. "I thought we might have lunch together. A proper family meal. The first of many." Such a simple suggestion, yet it represented everything that was changing. No longer the benefactor dining separately from the house manager and her daughter. No longer the secret uncle watching from a distance. Just family, sharing a meal together. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. As we sat down together, I realized that the confrontation with Preston, while necessary, had been the easier challenge of the day. This, learning to be present, to participate in the simple rituals of family life, would be the true test of my commitment. "I've been thinking," Arya said as Serena served the meal she'd prepared, "about my third wish." I set down my fork, giving her my full attention. "You still have one left." "Yes," she confirmed. "And I know exactly what I want to wish for." "Name it," I said, prepared for almost anything: financial requests, career assistance, perhaps even some grand gesture of public acknowledgement. Her answer surprised me completely. "Time," she said simply. "Regular time together. Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, ordinary moments. Not because of obligation or wishes or promises, but because that's what families do." "Time," I repeated, considering the request. Of all the resources at my disposal, money, power, influence, time had always been the one I guarded most jealously. The one I parceled out in careful increments, never giving more than absolutely necessary. "Is that too much to ask?" she pressed when I didn't immediately respond. "No," I said slowly. "It's not too much. It's just terrifying." Serena suggested gently. "Unfamiliar," I corrected, though she wasn't entirely wrong. "I've spent my life keeping people at a distance. Time together means vulnerability," Arya finished for me. "Connection. The chance to truly know each other, not just the carefully edited versions we present to the world." I nodded, acknowledging the truth of her assessment. "Yes, that's why it's my wish," she said. "Because it's the one thing you can't buy or arrange or delegate. It requires your personal investment, your presence." I looked between them, Serena, who had managed my life with quiet efficiency for 13 years while keeping her own counsel, and Arya, who had the courage to demand truth and connection when I would have continued in comfortable distance indefinitely. My family. Imperfect, complicated, bound by blood and choice and 13 years of shared history. "Your wish is granted," I said finally. "Time together. As much as you want." The smile that bloomed across Arya's face was worth every moment of discomfort the promise might bring. "Thank you, Uncle Roman." Uncle Roman. The title still felt strange, but no longer unwelcome. A role I was finally ready to claim, publicly and without reservation. "There's something else we should discuss," I said, setting down my glass. "The public acknowledgement of our relationship. How and when we want to proceed. Is that still what you want?" Serena asked carefully. "Now that the immediate threat from Preston is contained, we could continue as we have been." I shook my head. "No more hiding. No more secrets. Arya is my niece, my family, my heir. It's time the world knew it." "There will be questions," Arya pointed out. About why you kept it secret all these years. About my father. About our sudden appearance in your life. Let them question, I said with newfound resolve. We know the truth. The parts we choose to share publicly are up to us, but I won't deny our connection any longer. What about your business? Serena asked. Your privacy? All the reasons you've kept us at a distance all these years. Some things matter more, I said simply. I've spent my life building an empire, accumulating wealth and power, believing those were the only currencies of value. I was wrong. The admission cost me something, pride, perhaps, or the last vestiges of the armor I'd worn for so long. But the relief of finally acknowledging this truth outweighed the discomfort. So what happens now? Arya asked. How do we do this? Carefully, I said. Strategically. On our terms. A formal announcement, perhaps. Or simply beginning to appear together publicly, letting the world draw its own conclusions. Whatever we decide, Serena said, we decide together. As a family. Family. The word no longer felt foreign or frightening. It felt like a promise. A future. A wish finally coming true. As we continued our meal, making plans, sharing ideas, I realized that the climactic confrontation with Preston hadn't been the true resolution of our story. This was the three of us, together at last, no longer separated by secrets or fear or carefully maintained distance. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be adjustments, misunderstandings, the inevitable friction that comes when independent lives intertwine. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't facing the future alone. I had family. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, I stood at the window of my penthouse, watching the first snow of winter dust Manhattan in a pristine white blanket. Behind me, the sounds of conversation and laughter filled the space, sounds that would have been foreign in this apartment a year ago, but now felt increasingly natural. Uncle Roman, Arya called from the dining area. Mom says dinner's ready, and she won't serve until you join us. Uncle Roman. The title had become familiar over the months, comfortable in a way I never expected. I turned from the window to find my niece watching me with a knowing smile. Lost in thought again, she asked, approaching to stand beside me. Reflecting, I corrected. On how much has changed. She followed my gaze out to the snow-covered city. Good changes. Mostly, I admitted with a small smile. Though I'm still adjusting to having my Sunday evenings commandeered for family dinners. Poor billionaire, she teased. Forced to endure home-cooked meals and actual human connection. I chuckled, the sound coming more easily these days. A terrible burden. The past 6 months had been a period of profound transition for all of us. As promised, I had publicly acknowledged Arya as my niece, my brother's daughter, my heir. The announcement had created exactly the media frenzy I'd expected: speculation about why I'd kept her existence secret, questions about her father, curiosity about her sudden appearance in my life. We'd weathered it together, presenting a united front while revealing only what we chose to share. David had been my half-brother. He had died tragically young. I had supported his family privately out of respect for their grief and desire for privacy. Now, with Arya an adult and establishing her own career, the time for secrecy had passed. The business world had adjusted quickly to the revelation that Roman Calder had an heir, some with calculation, others with genuine congratulations. Competitors watched warily for signs of how this might change my approach to business. Partners and allies recalibrated their relationships to include Arya in their considerations. Through it all, she had shown remarkable poise and intelligence, neither hiding from the attention nor seeking it, simply accepting it as the natural consequence of our decision to live truthfully. Come on, she said now, tugging my arm gently. Mom made your favorite. We joined Serena at the dining table, set with the same care she'd always shown, but now with 3 places instead of 1. The penthouse itself had undergone subtle changes over the months, photographs displayed prominently, personal touches that softened its former sterility, evidence of the lives now intertwined with mine. Serena still managed my household with quiet efficiency, but our relationship had evolved beyond employer and employee. She was family now, acknowledged, valued, essential. The exact nature of our connection remained private, something between us alone, but the respect and care between us was evident to anyone who saw us together. I was beginning to think I'd have to send a formal summons, she said as we took our seats. Just admiring the snow, I explained. First of the season. It's beautiful, she agreed. Though it means the Connecticut property will be difficult to access soon. The Connecticut estate had become our weekend retreat, a place away from the city's demands where we could simply be a family without scrutiny or interruption. I'd found myself looking forward to those weekends with an eagerness that would have been unthinkable a year ago. We should go next weekend, Arya suggested. Before the roads get too bad. I want to show you both the research I've been doing for the foundation. The foundation. Another change in our lives, the David Cole Foundation, established to provide support for families affected by violence and financial hardship. Arya had taken the lead in its creation, channeling her energy and intelligence into something meaningful and healing. I'd like that, I said. Though I have a board meeting Friday afternoon. We might need to leave Saturday morning. I'll make the arrangements, Serena said, the simple offer carrying the weight of 13 years of similar gestures, small kindnesses that had built the foundation of our unusual family long before we acknowledged it as such. As we ate, the conversation flowed easily between us, Arya's work with the foundation, Serena's plans for renovating parts of the penthouse, my latest business ventures. The comfortable rhythm of family life that had once seemed so foreign to me. Oh, I almost forgot, Arya said suddenly. I ran into James Preston yesterday. The name still triggered a visceral response in me, tension, vigilance, the instinctive need to protect. Where? Charity gala at the Met, she said calmly. Don't worry, it was very public. Very civil. What did he want? Serena asked, her voice carefully neutral. Nothing, Arya assured us. He simply acknowledged me with a nod. I returned it. That was all. I studied her face, looking for signs of distress. You're sure? Positive, she said firmly. Our agreement holds. He stays away. We keep his confession locked away. Simple business. There's nothing simple about the Prestons, I cautioned. No, she agreed. But there's nothing to fear from them either. Not anymore. Her confidence wasn't naivete. It was the assurance of someone who had faced her demons and emerged stronger. In the months since our confrontation with Preston, Arya had transformed from a young woman seeking truth to one who had found it, accepted it, and built something new from its foundation. Speaking of business, Serena interjected, clearly wanting to change the subject. Arya has news she hasn't shared with you yet. I turned to my niece, eyebrow raised. News. A slight blush colored her cheeks. I was going to wait until after dinner. Wait for what? I pressed. She took a deep breath. I've been offered a position on the board of North Star Technologies. I set down my fork, genuinely surprised. North Star was one of the most innovative tech companies in my investment portfolio, a rising star with tremendous potential. That's unexpected. Is it? She challenged. I have a master's in business from Princeton, 3 years of nonprofit experience, and apparently connections to one of the most powerful venture capitalists in the country. I didn't arrange this, I said immediately. I know, she assured me. They approached me directly. Said they were impressed by my work with the foundation and thought my perspective would be valuable to their social impact initiatives. Pride swelled in my chest, not the possessive pride of seeing my influence at work, but the genuine pride of watching someone I cared about succeed on her own merits. You'll be excellent, I said simply. They're fortunate to have you. Her smile was worth every awkward family dinner, every uncomfortable moment of adjustment, every sacrifice of privacy and solitude I'd made over the past 6 months. Thank you, she said. That means a lot, coming from you. Will you accept the position? Serena asked. Arya nodded. I think so. It's a chance to influence corporate policy from the inside, to advocate for ethical business practices and genuine social responsibility. Plus, she added with a mischievous smile, it might be fun to see Uncle Roman from the other side of a boardroom table occasionally. Just don't expect any special treatment, I warned, though the effect was somewhat undermined by the pride I couldn't quite keep from my voice. I'd be insulted if you offered it, she retorted. Serena watched our exchange with a small smile. You two are more alike than either of you realizes. A terrifying thought, I said dryly. But an accurate one, Arya countered. Though I like to think I got Mom's compassion to balance out the Calder ruthlessness. A formidable combination, I acknowledged. As dinner concluded and we moved to the living room for coffee, I found myself reflecting again on the journey that had brought us here. From Arya's first wish for truth to this moment of genuine family connection, a transformation none of us could have fully anticipated. I have something for both of you, I said, retrieving a small box from my desk. A token of appreciation for your patience with me these past months. I handed the box to Arya, who opened it curiously. Inside lay 3 keys on a simple silver ring. Keys, she asked, looking up at me in confusion. To the brownstone on West 78th Street, I explained. I purchased it last month. It's being renovated now to your mother's specifications. Serena's eyes widened. Roman, we talked about this. Arya and I are perfectly comfortable in our apartment. The apartment I own, I pointed out gently. Where you've lived as my employee, not as family. The brownstone is different. It's in both your names. A home that's truly yours, not an extension of my property. Arya turned the keys over in her hand. But why 3 keys? 1 for each of you, I said. And 1 for me. If that's acceptable. The significance wasn't lost on either of them. I wasn't just giving them a home, I was asking for a place in it. Not as the owner or the benefactor, but as family. Of course it's acceptable, Serena said softly. It's perfect. The renovations should be complete by spring, I continued. I thought perhaps, for your birthday, Arya. Her birthday. April 15th. A date I'd acknowledged for 13 years with generous gifts delivered through Serena, never presented in person. This year would be different. This year I would be present, not just as the source of the gift, but as the uncle celebrating his niece's special day. Thank you, Arya said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Not just for the house, but for everything. For keeping your promises. For being the family I wished for. I'm still learning, I admitted. This doesn't come naturally to me. It doesn't come naturally to any of us, Serena pointed out. Family is something you build, day by day, choice by choice. Even people who grow up with it have to learn how to be family to each other as adults. Some lessons are harder than others, I acknowledged. But worth learning nonetheless. Arya set the keys carefully on the coffee table. I have something for you too. Both of you. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, wrapped package, handing it to me. I opened it to find a leather-bound book. Opening the cover, I realized it was a photo album, but not filled with old photographs like the ones Serena had displayed months ago. These were new. Recent. The 3 of us together over the past 6 months. Sunday dinners at the penthouse. Weekends at the Connecticut estate. The formal announcement of Arya as my niece and heir. Quiet moments I hadn't even realized were being captured, Serena and I in the kitchen, Arya and I deep in conversation in my library. The 3 of us walking through Central Park on a golden autumn day. When did you take all these? I asked, genuinely moved by the gift. I didn't, Arya said. I asked Reynolds to have someone document our first 6 months as a public family. For historical purposes, I told him. I looked up sharply. Reynolds knew about this? He was surprisingly supportive, Arya said with a small smile. I think he's been waiting for you to acknowledge us for years. My entire staff probably has, I muttered, though without real annoyance. Nothing stays private in this tower. Some things do, Serena said quietly, her gaze meeting mine with meaning only I would understand. The things that matter most. I nodded, acknowledging the truth of her words. Some aspects of our family dynamic remain private, the exact nature of my relationship with Serena, the full details of David's death, the deepest truths we shared only with each other. The world knew we were family now, but the heart of what bound us together remained our own. This is just the beginning, Arya said, gesturing to the album. There are plenty of empty pages left to fill. The simple statement carried profound meaning, a promise of future memories, of continued connection, of a family story still unfolding. I look forward to filling them, I said, surprising myself with how deeply I meant it. As the evening continued, with conversation flowing easily between topics both significant and trivial, I found myself experiencing something I'd rarely felt in my life: contentment. Not the satisfaction of a business victory or the temporary pleasure of an acquisition, but a deeper, quieter sense of rightness, of belonging. Later, as Arya prepared to leave, still maintaining her own apartment despite my repeated offers of a suite in the penthouse, she paused at the door. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when I made that first wish for the truth, I never imagined where it would lead. I thought I was just seeking answers about my father, about the past. And instead, I prompted. Instead, I found a future," she said simply. "A family. A place where I truly belong." "We all did," I acknowledged. After she left, Serena and I stood in comfortable silence, looking out at the snow-covered city. "She's remarkable," I said finally. "You did an extraordinary job raising her." "We both did," Serena corrected gently. "In our own ways." I turned to her, this woman who had managed my life with quiet efficiency for 13 years, who had raised a daughter of exceptional character and intelligence, who had somehow become essential to my existence in ways I was only beginning to fully understand. "I never thanked you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For keeping your promise. For staying. For giving me the chance to keep mine." She smiled, the expression softening the lines that 13 years of secrets and vigilance had etched around her eyes. "Some promises shape our entire lives, Roman. The ones we make to others, and the ones we make to ourselves." "And what promise did you make to yourself?" I asked, curious. "To create a life of safety and opportunity for my daughter," she said simply. "No matter what it cost me personally." "And did you succeed?" Her gaze drifted to the door Arya had just exited through. "Beyond anything I could have imagined. She has family now. Real family. Not just me, carrying the weight of secrets and fears alone, but you too. A connection to her father through you. A future secured not just by your money, but by your name, your blood, your presence in her life." "And you?" I pressed. "What about your future?" A small smile touched her lips. "My future has been intertwined with yours for 13 years, Roman. I see no reason for that to change now." The simple statement carried layers of meaning, acknowledgement of our complex relationship, neither purely professional nor conventionally personal, but something uniquely our own. A partnership forged in tragedy, tempered by time, and finally acknowledged for what it truly was: family. Not by blood, as with Arya, but by choice. By shared history. By the promises we'd kept to each other through 13 years of secrets and distance and careful boundaries. "Nor do I agreed softly. As Serena moved to clear the last of the dinner dishes, a task she still insisted on handling personally despite my offers to hire additional staff, I returned to the window, watching the snow continue to fall on the city below. A year ago, I had stood at this same window, alone in my carefully constructed fortress, believing that solitude was the price of power and success. Now, the penthouse echoed with the lingering warmth of family dinner, of shared laughter, of connections I denied myself for too long. Arya's 3 wishes had changed everything, not just for her, but for all of us. Her wish for truth had forced me to confront the secrets I'd kept, even from myself. Her wish for acknowledgement had pushed me to step out of the shadows, to claim publicly the family connections I'd hidden for years. And her wish for time together had given me something I never knew I needed: the simple joy of belonging. In granting her wishes, I'd somehow fulfilled my own deepest desire, one I'd buried so deeply I hadn't recognized it until it was already coming true. The desire for family. For connection. For home. David's final request, that I protect his family as the brother I never got to be to him, had been fulfilled in ways neither of us could have imagined that rainy night 13 years ago. I had kept my promise, not just through financial support and distant protection, but finally through presence. Through love. As Serena rejoined me at the window, her shoulder lightly touching mine in the comfortable familiarity we'd developed, I realized that some wishes, once granted, continue to unfold their magic long after the initial promise is fulfilled. Arya had wished for truth, for acknowledgement, for time together. What she'd really wished for, what we'd all needed without fully recognizing it, was family. And that wish, against all odds, had finally come true. If you've enjoyed this journey with Roman, Arya, and Serena, please hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part of their story? Would you like to see more stories like this on my channel? Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more emotional journeys with you all. Thank you for being here with me through this beautiful tale of family, forgiveness, and finding home.